Shiba Yuga, utterly disoriented, tries to steady himself in a bizarre courtroom like he's trying to grab reality with his bare hands. He flashes back to being a 29-year-old broke guy, the kind of trouble that gets last seen chugging drinks in Shinjuku. From a towering balcony, a council of otherworldly beings scrutinizes him, then confirms without a doubt that he's the real one. A regal king towers above, massive white beard bristling, and he glares down like judgment itself. Yuga breaks into a cold sweat, stunned by what he's seeing, and can't stop wondering if this nightmare is real or just a dream. The chapter title slams it right into place. This is no normal courtroom, this is the law court of another world. The blonde man in a red beret watches the whole scene like a hawk, his gaze razor sharp. The dark-haired elf girl stands there in total silence, wearing indifference like a stone-cold mask. Then his mind snaps back to a buzzing izakaya, and he lifts his drink for a loud, proud toast. He grins and blurts out how long it's been since this crew was all together. His friend good-naturedly calls it out, Yuga's always the one dragging them forward. A female friend clocks that nothing about him has changed, then practically melts with relief. His handsomeness still reassures her. Up above, his friend points out that Yuga is still drop-dead handsome, but yeah, his job title has totally changed. His crew is loaded with legal heavyweights, successful lawyers, a serious court official, and a hotshot prosecutor. The spiky-haired friend fires off a non-stop rant about how brutal his job is at the stingy boss. When they grill Yuga about his earnings, he dodges the question and fires back that he's still grinding to pass the bar. He's grinning like he already won, boldly claiming that once he passes, he'll earn more than all of them. His cocky boast hits the room, and instead of cheers, his friends drop into an awkward, pity-soaked silence. His friends shoot worried looks at each other because they don't know how to talk him down from that loud, reckless bravado. She softens her tone, pivots the conversation, thanks him for showing up, and nudges them into taking a sip. Yuga blurts out he's heading to the restroom, like he's trying to dodge something the second he feels it coming. Confusion hits him like a punch, and humiliation follows right behind, dragging him down. Alone in the restroom, his confident mask starts to crack piece by piece. His friend steps in, confronts him, and demands to know why he's falling apart over failing 5 times. His friends mutter hit him like a punch, like they'd finally clocked that his failures were a touchy subject. One friend tries to dodge the tension with a shaky, nervous laugh. He explodes, snapping at his successful friend to stay away from anyone who's failing. The memory slips away, and there he stands alone on the overpass, staring at the edge like death is right there waiting for him. He collapses in despair, stuck with 0 career prospects and a mountain of crushing student debt weighing him down. Right now, his friends feel like they've been dropped into a whole other world, one they can't reach, not even if they fight for it. He finally realizes there's just one brutal way out: die, reset his life, and start over from scratch. But his despair snaps into a huge, almost manic grin. He flat out refuses the idea of death, insisting he'd never have the guts to go through with it. He bellows into the night, swearing on everything that he'll rise up to become a legendary lawyer. Consumed by pure momentum, he lunges too far, and the old railing snaps beneath him. His face snaps into stunned disbelief as he drops into that terrifying plunge. As he drops, he howls his last, desperate dare into the heavens, screaming to God for the trials to come. He freezes in terror as the railing drops, and he goes with it. His prized law book spins through the air, and with it, his dream crashes and burns. He doesn't hit the pavement, he smacks into a girl's impossibly cheerful face. One second he's fine, and the next, he's drifting in a starry void, utterly stunned by how everything just flipped on him. The gothic Lolita girl drifts above him like a dream, so close that he can't even find the words to speak. She leans in and asks if he likes her outfit, then proudly admits she built the whole look off Japanese fashion. Swamped with confusion, he can only choke out, "Who are you?" She beams with pride and drops the ultimate bombshell: she's not just a god, she's God. Then she orders him to bow low and present her with tribute. He wrestles with it in his head, trying to make it make sense. Maybe it's some custom he just didn't know about. She drops the bombshell: she's from another world, and she didn't just meet him, she summoned him here herself. With a bright, excited glint in her eyes, she grabs his attention and pulls him into her world. He brushes her off, calling her just some outsider who's way too hooked on Japanese pop culture. With awkward hands and a shaky voice, he tries to calm the situation down, asking where her parents or her guardians are. Frustrated by his doubt, she casually flicks his hand away with a sharp slap. Still trying to keep his cool, he dips into a bow and asks her where they are. His polite smile only fuels her rage, and she snaps that he's questioning her. He demanded her name and she shot back, "No, he called me gods among." That strange grin spreads across his face as he awkwardly, then fully gives in to her demand. Her eye blasts across the screen, an endless swirl of light, and with a fierce vow she promises she'll finally show him what she's got. In the blink of an eye, he's on his knees on a cobblestone street inside a medieval town. The god girl slips in behind him, smirking as she taunts, "So, were you impressed by my display?" He scrambles upright, blaring in disbelief, and demands to know right now what she just did. She beams and proudly names the place, Luano, a tiny nation in their world. "You can't believe what you're seeing." The sweat rolls down his temple like the moment is burning. He stares at the architecture, convinced he's been yanked out of his world and dropped somewhere in Europe. A tough blonde warrior with an eye patch keeps her distance and watches them like she's ready to strike. The god girl leans in and confesses that her world is in real trouble and things are only getting worse. She argues that without conflict, civilization just freezes, stagnant, stuck, and never evolving. Though she couldn't resist and slipped into his world, hunting for the answer. She tracked down his country, Japan, and was blown away by how calm and peaceful it felt. And that spark hit her mind like lightning. She unveils the idea with a snap, like she's daring the world to keep up. She's about to bring Japan's laws to her world, and he's the one who's going to stand up in court and fight for them as its lawyer. She admits she'd rather have had a real lawyer by her side, but life threw up too many obstacles. Her grin turns sly, like she's reminding him right before he meets death that it's all conveniently in motion. He can't believe he's dead, but she hits him with the truth. Her divine interference has to stay in check. It was the easiest, fastest way to call a soul to the surface. He protests, but she flicks her hand and waves him off, telling him to wait for the welcome. She stares him down with a sharp, knowing look that says she already has him figured out. Then she erupts into a victorious laugh, waving off his protests like they're total nonsense. She drags him back to that desperate plea he once made, begging for trials and tribulations. He realizes his wish actually came true when she lays out her sky-high expectations for him. She flashes a brilliant, sparkling smile as she readies her final decree. She makes it official, starting right now he's a lawyer. He's stranded on the street, while she disappears in a flash of light. He mutters through gritted teeth about his brand new god boss, still trying to figure out where the hell he's located. He scans the townsfolk and one fact hits him hard: he's never been here in his life. A bubbly market woman and a walking, bipedal lizardman strutted right past him, like it was the most normal thing in the world. The lizard man jabs a finger and grins, calling out just how wild and out of place Yuga's modern clothes look in this world. He keeps moving forward, like someone just dumped him into a real-life role-playing game. He can't help but sneer, wondering if his very first case is really about defending some thieving lizardmen. He suddenly spots a lone figure far off and yells to get their attention. The carriage driver juts out his ego and barks at the common folk to clear the way right now. Yugo leans in from the sidelines as the nobleman's carriage thunders down the street. A nearby citizen seethes and mutters a curse under his breath at the entitled nobility. Nobleman Lord Galvia watches with pure disdain, like he can't stand what he's seeing. Yuga glares at the scene in pure annoyance and snaps at a nearby mother. A tiny girl suddenly darts into the street, and Yuga freezes in pure panic. The girl sprints after her mom. She's just vanished through a doorway. She darts right into the speeding carriage's path, right as it careens out of control. Yuga's eyes bulge with pure terror as the danger closes in. Faint shimmer of magic flares around the cloaked elf's hand nearby. Right before she can move, Yuga's fist crashes into the carriage with unbelievable power. A horse-drawn carriage rips down the cobblestone street straight at a small child, like it's coming for them. The little girl is frozen stiff on the ground, stunned and completely powerless as it blocks her path. Tears gather in her eyes as she starts to cry out for her mother. Her mother stands by the roadside, eyes wide with dread, as the girl's screams rip through the air. Yuga and the other bystanders stare in total shock as the carriage slams to a brutal stop. The guard yells, "We're under attack," and his master demands, "Are you okay?" Yuga just freezes there, a nervous bead of sweat sliding down his temple. The guard snaps orders to his men to shield their master at all costs, then demands answers: who started the attack and where it came from. Donatella, her cloak fluttering, sizes up the attacker and realizes he's nothing more than a commoner. Donatella froze in place, wearing a stone-cold, unreadable mask that gave away nothing. The carriage guards stare in stunned silence, totally baffled by what just exploded in front of them. One guard snaps her out, elf, and then loses it, screaming that it's a rebellion. Yoga stands there and watches the chaos explode right between the terrified townspeople as they run for their lives. With a crooked grin, he wonders if he should book it and run away too. The knight's armored leg crashes down with a thunderous slam, shouting for everyone to stop dead in their tracks. Liliana Omgard, right there in the royal guard, rises up and declares she's taking control of everything. She barks an order for the elf to be seized and dragged into custody, because there's no room left for debate. Donatella drops her gaze, and the guards haul her in as a heavy, somber look settles across her face. Lord Galvia explodes with fury, barking at the knight to execute that filthy elf traitor right now. Liliana coolly flat-out refuses his command, telling him those days are long gone. The nobleman's sneers hit like a blade, fueled by how dare that nobody act so bold in the night. Liliana barks orders to her soldiers, grab Donatello and haul him away before he can slip out and escape. Yuka hangs awkwardly at the side while the chaos finally gets brought under control. Liliana spins toward him and demands, "Are you Shiba Yuga?" And he stammers back, nervously confirming it. She shoots him a sharp look and says, "Come with me, King himself called for you and you're coming." Yuga's frozen solid, she can barely breathe as the truth hits, she's talking about the actual king. A royal legend steps into the spotlight, King Marius Luano, towering presence and that magnificent white beard shining like a crown. Yuga clenches his nerves and thinks that has to be a king, no question about it. Liliana yanks his head down with brutal force, snarling at him for refusing to bow. The king tells him to chill, God already warned him about Yuga. Yuga's drenched in sweat and that's when it hits, yeah, he's actually meant to be the lawyer. The king steps up and declares that God has blessed their kingdom with Japan's laws. He hands over the full book of Luinode Lam, locking it in for every trial that comes next. Then the god girl shows up and straight up declares that this is her will for how the kingdom will grow. The king finally admits he's totally lost in these new laws, and he's studying them with frantic, sleepless intensity. Yuga leans in, eyes locked and face set hard as he absorbs every word. The king makes it brutally clear, Luano's entire future now hangs on Yuga's shoulders. Yuga's stomach drops, he's panicking inside, praying God didn't bring up his 5-bar exam failures. The god girl drops the bombshell that something just happened, then turns to Liliana and demands she open the court. Utterly stunned, Yuga lets Liliana steer him away, still scrambling to understand how all of this happened so fast. They shove him into a massive, dead-quiet courtroom and solemn shafts of light rain down on him like judgment. A courtier in a beret sits at his desk, calm as stone, quietly reading a book like nothing in the world can shake him. That weird panel of judges, lizardmen and all, finally takes their seats. The courtroom gallery sits empty, its balustrade waiting, like it's holding its breath for the spectators to finally arrive. Yuka whips her head around the room and blurts, "This is a real courtroom." The king leans in and quizzes Yuga on what he thinks, saying it looks just like the courts of Japan. Yuga finally admits, yeah, as a student, he's never actually been in one. The king thunders that this is a historic trial, then orders everyone to lock in and do their duty. Yuga's stomach drops, he's been yanked into a fantasy world and hauled into a trial, and it's more than he can handle. Joan Wyson shows up out of nowhere. The prosecutor gets introduced as the stern Royal Guard commander. Even with all this chaos swirling around him, Yuga is convinced of one thing, he knows exactly what to trust. A calm, confident smirk crawls onto his face the moment he realizes this is the best. He flashes back to every brutal year he poured into studying, all chasing the one shot to stand right here. He clenches his fist tight, and steel-hard determination locks in as he commits to doing it. He slams his fist and announces, "I'm a lawyer," then orders the courtroom to rise because it's time for the session to begin. The next chapter kicks off with Yuga standing poised in a nearly empty courtroom, ready to strike. He steels his nerves for whatever's coming next, locked in now that he's claimed his new identity as a lawyer. From his towering throne, King Marius bellows for the defendant to be dragged into the chamber. Courtroom doors groan as guards march the accused inside. Yuga lets out a tiny, sharp gasp, like he just recognized everything. Donatella marched ahead with rope cinched around her hands, her face locked in cold, unreadable calm. Yuga's stomach drops, he suddenly realizes the defendant is the very girl he'd seen out on the street. A cruel murmur ripples through the gallery, and they sneer at the elf with her pointed ears like she's nothing. The guard grabs Donatella and ushers her straight into the defendant's box. Prosecutor Joan Wyson strides up to the court and formally introduces himself. He tells everyone that even though the trial's rules look brand new, his hunger to punish the guilty hasn't changed one bit. He swears this new Japanese law will force that criminal to pay for her sins. Yuga grimaced as the realization hit. This confident, handsome guy wasn't just impressive, he was his enemy. Joan kicks off his opening statement, gearing up to lay every one of the defendant's crimes bare. He makes a formal, no-turning-back identification of the accused as Donatella Bastionary. He spins it as the next brutal chapter in the endless, blood-soaked war against the elves. He snaps that her race has bared its fangs again, and he won't let it slide, never. The gallery erupts, screaming at the elf to be hanged. Joan lays it all out. An explosion spell was unleashed on Lord Galvia's carriage. He declares that Donatella's magic lashed out and injured noble Lord Galvia. He slams his claim down hard. Under the kingdom's old laws, the only punishment they've got is death. Under the new bodily harm law, the sentence can slam down for up to 15 years. Yuga listens, convinced the prosecutor is hopping past the only details that actually matter. The king leans in and demands to know whether the defendant has anything at all to say in her own defense. Yuga leans in close and urges Donatella to spill everything fast so she doesn't get nailed for what happened. Donatella says dead serious, "I've got nothing to say," and Yuga freezes in total shock. He's pushing her to say the one thing she needs to protect herself, because he refuses to believe she has nothing left to defend herself with. She whirls away from him and shuts him out, ignoring his desperate pleas like they don't even matter. Yuga rips into a silent inner scream, furious that she's ignoring him. He rises on his feet and boldly tells the court, "I've got a counter-argument to hit back with." With zero hesitation, he quotes Penal Code Article 37, proving the whole emergency evasion rule is on his side. The king, instantly hooked by that mysterious word, leans in and studies it up close with a magnifying glass. Yuga swears loads of people saw what happened, Liliana included. The king whips around to Liliana and demands she confirm every detail of what happened. Liliana swears that a young girl, Sonia Campbell, was moments away from getting run over. Yuga declares that the emergency evasion conditions are finally in place, so it's time to move. Jones smirks at Yuga and tells him that sure, he's read the law, but he just can't understand a single word of it. Yuga lays it out for them, how you weigh the harm that got stopped against the harm that actually happened. He insists that ever since Donatella saved Sonia's life, she's already satisfied every requirement the law demands. Jones snaps his head back and bursts into a huge, uproarious laugh. Yuga slams his question down, demanding to know why everyone's laughing at his legal argument. Jones smirks and challenges him, does he really think a commoner's life is worth more than a noble's? Lord Galvia nods in agreement, then he crowns himself the main character, bragging about his grand bloodline like it makes him untouchable. Jones' face contorts with rage as he roars at Yuga to stop messing with him. Yuga is left totally speechless, frozen in shock at this alien way of thinking and judging the world. Lord Galvia's supporter is stunned, but the nobleman shrugs off the lawyer's words like they're nothing but common sense. King Marius fires a question at Yuga, asking whether the defense has any counterarguments, and Yuga freezes, totally blindsided. At the dock, Donatella leans over the edge, her face heavy with defeat like she's accepted the worst. Yuga stumbles over his words, panicking over where to start, while Donatella fires sharp questions at his silence from the side. From the gallery, a mixed crowd of citizens glares down in unmistakable disgust. Lord Galvia and another nobleman sneer, because the lawyer going silent is exactly what they figured would happen. Galvia slams the truth down, an elf hurt a noble and she's not asking for anyone's opinion. A hand grips the dock's railing as a life-changing thought snaps into place. The nobleman sneers at the proposed 15-year sentence, laughing it off as shockingly lenient. He jerks himself upright and slams the conclusion down, this whole incident proves elves are a menace. He declares that the only way to protect everyone is to wipe out the entire elven race. The gallery explodes into a furious chant, screaming for the elf's execution, straight up for hanging. King Marius slams his fist to the ground and his thunderous roar rips through the court, demanding total silence. Right before the verdict, he slams the brakes with an announcement, recess, and Yuga's protest never gets a word out. Liliana confirms the recess and Yuga's stunned, he lunges forward reaching out to protest. The guard grips his post outside the thick, heavy doors of a private chamber, watching every shadow. Yoga grabs his head with both hands, seething as he rages at how this world's values are twisted. He can't stop asking how he's even supposed to use Japanese law in a culture that couldn't be more different. Donatella stays dead silent, and her face wears an unreadable, stone-cold mask. Yoga snaps her attention on, begging her, "Why won't you just tell me what happened?" like the truth is slipping away. She shuts her eyes tight, shutting out his frantic begging for her to talk. Liliana snaps at him to shut his mouth, because his fury won't change a thing. She tells you that elves are born cautious, and that her silence is exactly what you should expect. Yoga scoffs and fires back that her caution isn't fear, it's a death sentence. He shoots back that in her situation she can't afford to play it safe, then Liliana's jaw drops in shock. He paints a brutal world where elves are hunted down, and the incautious are already dead. Donatella finally breaks her silence, and when she reveals her father was human, everything clicks, she's a half-elf. Liliana's eyes widened at the truth, and she immediately offered a real, heartfelt apology for how she'd been judging everyone. Donatella lets out a low, dismissive scoff, then shuts her eyes. Yoga realizes the prejudice cuts way deeper than he ever guessed, and he forces himself to keep moving. He slides into the seat across from her and tells her straight up, "I'm your lawyer, I need your trust, and I need your cooperation." She scoffs at his plea, straight up asking what her cooperation would even accomplish. She shot back with a cynical smirk, asking what she'd possibly get from helping when his arguments had already fallen flat. You guys were left utterly speechless by her logic, and you could only mutter that she should leave him alone. Across the table, Donatella sinks into her seat and declares, ice cold and certain, that this trial is already lost. Yuga was completely baffled, and he blurted out why she'd done it at all. He presses her for answers, furious. Why did she save Sonya if she knew this is exactly how it would end? She admits that looking back now, she realizes her own choices were straight-up foolish. Her heart eases for a second, then she's about to bear the real, gut-punching truth behind why she's been doing this all along. She tells you she used to have a younger sister, until death tore her away for good. A vivid memory crashes in her sister's face, identical to Sonya's. She couldn't stand watching her sister die again, because that alone was the reason. Yuga is left utterly speechless as the brutal tragedy of her past hits like a gut punch. Empathy hits him like a wave, and the tears start streaming down his face, leaving everyone else stunned. Liliana leaned in and asked why he was crying, then offered him her handkerchief like it could wipe away the pain. He breaks down in sobs, saying it's downright cruel to punish her just for saving her sister. Donatella just stares, sweat beading on her temple, utterly lost at what he's doing. She looks him dead in the eye and says she has no clue what he's talking about, or who he even is. Yoga keeps breaking down in tears while Liliana watches, and her face twists into pure, breathless exasperation. He whips around to Liliana and demands to know if she doesn't think this whole situation is strange as hell. She snaps at him to keep his distance, then, after a beat, admits she gets exactly why he feels this way. She lays it out plainly. Nobles don't just wear fine titles, they're treated like royalty because their bloodline runs deep and their service keeps the kingdom standing. Yuga snaps that the girl's life was spared by fate, while the noble only got a brutal injury in the end. He blows his nose and insists, full of confidence, that the whole value gap is clearly wrong. Liliana admits that Lord Gelvia's behavior is way too much, and it keeps causing real trouble. She points out that his reckless moves are breaking the law, and under the king's power, that's a line he has no right to cross. In fact, she points out that plenty of nobles are starting to toss their loyalty to the king aside. The king isn't buying their arrogance, and he's got to move with ruthless caution before things blow up. She snaps that anything that chips away at the king's authority can't be allowed to slide. This kind of chaos doesn't just happen, it tears at the nation's peace and puts its people in real danger. She lays it out for everyone. Those nobles aren't some extension of the king's will, they stand as their own independent powers. They'll only toe the line if there's a reason strong enough to make discipline feel unavoidable. Liliana snaps that it's time to head back to the courtroom, but Yuga stops her cold and tells her to wait. She snaps around, totally baffled, and blurts, "Wait, what did you just say?" He tells her not yet, then waves it off and orders her to drop it for a moment. Panic hits him like a wave, he scrambles and pats his pockets like crazy, and then the sick realization lands, something's missing. Liliana blurts, "What are you doing?" as he spots the lost item and lets out a breathy, relieved gasp. He lifts that signature black and white necktie, decked out in little heart patterns. Donatella eyes the wild, flashy cloth he's clutching like it's priceless, then asks what it's all about. Yoga snaps the truth into place. This isn't some charm, it's a ritual that steals his resolve so he can fight. He swears that sliding into a suit and his favorite tie always fires his spirit right up. He remembers rocking this exact outfit for every single one of his 5 failed bar exams. A montage slashes through his past, every time he fights through hell in the same outfit. But when he stares into his own reflection, he vows, this time everything changes. Liliana stared at him, eyes sharp, and demanded to know what he meant by saying that. Donatella stands there, face set in stone, eyes locked with fierce, serious intensity. Yoga's face hardens with fierce determination as he fine-tunes his time. We snap back to the royal courthouse, massive, towering, and downright intimidating from the outside. King Marius rises on his throne and orders the court to regroup right now. Donatella just stands there, stone still on the dock, while Lord Galvia looms in the gallery behind her. The king calls for final words, and Yoga's arm rockets up as he screams out his statement. He declares he wants to lock in the heart of the trial and confirm the main point. Prosecutor Joan shuts it down and says the whole fight is about relative value, then declares the verdict is basically staring everyone in the face. Yoga flashes a razor-sharp grin and just smirks, okay, like it's already decided. Then he swivels to the throne and fires a challenge at the judge, knowing damn well the king is watching too. He cranes his neck to the monarch, face set in stone, and fires off, I've got a question. Even with Joan fighting back, the king gives the final word. He orders Yoga to forge ahead. The king stares down in shock as the lawyer demands the right to question him, straight to his face. Yuka kicks off his line of questioning, and even with everything on the line, his voice stays rock steady. A massive vertical panel crashes in, showing just how enormous the kingdom of Luano really is. Yuga's jaw drops wide as he fires off his audacious, game-changing question. His words slam into the air across the city. So tell me, Your Majesty, is this country worth anything to you? Camera dives in on the king's eyes, wide, stunned, and frozen in pure shock. Liliana just stares, eyes bulging at the lawyer's unbelievable nerve. Donatella stands off to the side, eyes locked on the action, fear and hope twisting in her expression. Lord Galvia is totally stunned and he snaps, demanding to know exactly what that man is saying. The king blares that Luanu is everything, then swears he'd gladly lay down his life for it without a single hesitation. Yoga, satisfied, leans in and fires off a deep question, so tell me, what even is a country? He breaks it down, a country isn't just the land you see on a map, it's something way deeper than that. And it's not just the power of the rulers, those larger-than-life portraits hanging in the palace halls make it feel like the whole place is watching you. Yoga snaps his hand forward like he's back in those old constitutional law lectures, reliving every word with dramatic flair. He says a nation isn't just land and laws, it's the people, and without them it stops existing. So he slams down his verdict, Sonia Campbell's life is worth just as much as the entire nation. From the gallery, pompous Lord Galvia scowls with a grim, seething rage, eyes locked on the scene. Prosecutor Joan Wyson gives a smug little chuckle, cold, dismissive, and completely unimpressed. He throws his head back and bursts into laughter, shouting that the whole argument is utterly ridiculous. He sneered, asking how many ordinary citizens you'd need to even match one single noble. Yoga snaps, fists clenched, demanding to know where the king got the nerve to draw that line. Joan brushes off the question, basically saying there's no reason to even define something like that. Yoga whips around toward the throne and barks at the king, pick him or his people. The king snaps back instantly like, of course, I'd choose my people, no question. He makes it crystal clear, the scales of justice right now are weighing only one citizen's life. Joan grimaces as the truth hits, Yoga's wild logic might actually pull it off. He mutters that Yoga's reckless gambit was a real shame, but then he cuts it off because it's done. Yoga nods with a smug grin, knowing his perfectly engineered trap is finally set. He marched right up to the king and demanded the right to fire one last, life-or-death question. Donatella sits in the defendant's box, eyes blazing, waiting for what's about to happen next. Yoga leans in and asks the king, would you really kill a friend or slice off your own son's finger? The king freezes, staring him down as he demands, what are you asking me, why would you say something so grim? Liliana cuts in, snapping at Yoga and tearing into him for his blatant disrespect toward the monarch. Yoga roars at her, shouting that this is exactly the job the king handed him. He glares at the throne, crowding the king for an answer to his burning dilemma. The king's eyes pinch tight and deep, and you can feel the weight of his troubled, solemn thoughts pressing down on him. After that crushing silence, he finally blurts out that there's no way he could ever make a choice like that. Yoga demanded to know why anyone would pick a random stranger instead of their own child. The king leans in and lays down the truth: life is priceless, and he must carry his bloodline forward no matter what. Yoga nods back with that knowing smile, because no matter what, you can't pick one choice and leave the other behind. He leans in with a grim face, telling Joan to rethink the trial from this brand new angle. He reminds the court that Lord Galvia's injury was nothing major, it only lingered for a single week. He likens it to a scraped knee, just a small, harmless cut that mends itself without a fuss. He contrasts the noble's tiny, meaningless wound with the priceless life of an ordinary citizen. He steps up in front of the king and dares him to pick between those two values. Yoga fires the king's own conclusion right back at him: you can't choose. He whips the law book in front of the court and starts quoting the emergency evasion article word for word. Joan's eyes fly wide as he reads the text, and it hits him: everything clicks into place. You can say it like this: if neither one gets the priority, then emergency evasion is locked in. Liliana stared at a bead of sweat rolling down her temple, completely frozen as his flawless logic locked her in place. Lord Galvia watches from the gallery, staring like he can't believe what he's seeing. Donatella watches everything unfold, and her face lights up with wild hope and pure shock. Joan panics as she watches the entire courtroom get swept away by Yuga's relentless argument. He blurts out a desperate protest, pounding the point that the defendant is a half-elf. Yuga roars that her race doesn't matter one bit, then he slams down the truth: the central point has been confirmed. He dares his opponents: either answer his move with a counter or shut up for good. Joan freezes on the spot, clutching his uniform, completely outplayed and left speechless. The king stamps his authority, saying he's heard every plea, and sets his verdict in motion. He can't help but look back and relive the legendary deeds of Lord Galvia's ancestor, Theodora Galvia. He fully recognizes just how legendary and how wildly prestigious the historic Galvia house truly is. Still, he snaps and admits Yuga's right: Sonia Campbell is one of his own. He can feel his nobles turning resentful by the day, so he steels himself and steps up to stake his authority. The king lifts his hand, poised to deliver a quiet yet powerful nudge to the scales of justice. He calls this new law a thread of reason he has to protect at all costs. He has no choice, so he's forced to swallow the evasion as legit, no matter what. The king's verdict crashes into the hall. Donatella Bastianeri stands cleared, not guilty. Donatella freezes in total shock, her mind scrambling to catch up with what she just heard. The gallery explodes into chaos as Lord Galvia barrels in, shouting, "What does this mean?" Donatella whirls on Yuga and blurts his name, her voice shaking with a flood of overwhelming emotion. She blushes and asks, trembling, how in the world she's supposed to ever repay him for saving her life. Yuka shoots back, reassuring her that he's only doing exactly what a lawyer's supposed to do. He finally admits it: he was so nervous he started crying, but he's relieved he could still help. Donatella insists she can't just let his unbelievable feat slip by unnoticed. Her expression melts into a radiant, grateful smile as she calls him her savior. Yuga freezes on the spot, cheeks burning red as her blush explodes at his heartfelt, sincere praise. Lord Galvia slams his hand on the railing and roars that this is absolutely ridiculous. He throws himself at the king's feet, begging him to rethink it, because if he doesn't, this choice will shake the very foundation of his reign. The king stands rock solid and declares his verdict won't budge, because this trial is final, no questions left. Lord Galvia stammers for his life, but the king's final word slices his protest clean off mid-sentence. Rage flames in his eyes as he snaps that even if the king forgives her, he'll strap on his own weapons and take the elf down himself. A guard in the crowd spots it instantly: Galvia's been collecting private soldiers in secret. Donatella nods and adds, he's been stockpiling weapons for a reason, this isn't random. Yuga slams down Article 128, screaming that preparing for insurrection is the crime. The king slammed his law book open and blurted out in shock, because a brand new crime just lit up his page. Lord Galvia stares, sweat dripping down his brow as the weight of his brutal mistake finally lands. Yuga swings the truth like a hammer: everyone should have the right to hire a lawyer. He keeps going, saying that this right stands tall no matter how arrogant you try to be. Lord Galvia goes red with rage, sputtering out furious words as the insult slams into his noble pride. Yuga slaps on a fake "what do you mean" face, then hits him with a sharp question about that arrogant tone. He flashes one last smug, absolutely triumphant grin. A montage slams through his life, born in Japan, then pushing forward until he's now a lawyer in Luano. He steps up and declares loud and proud that he's the lawyer of heretical law, then slams the chapter shut. The next chapter kicks off by flipping the spotlight onto Shiba Yuga, the guy who's crashed and burned 5 times. It flashes back to how a god dragged him into the fantasy world of Luanu. His dream of becoming a lawyer, something Japan would have shut down in his world, somehow shattered reality and came true in this one. He's decided to live as the lawyer of the Red Long. Yuga jolts awake, eyes snapping open in a rush of pure panic. He jolts upright in a lavish, strange bed, then rips the covers back with a sudden gasp. With both hands clamped to his head, sweat pours as reality hits. This wasn't a dream. He swings out of bed, and his feet immediately snag his folded clothes on the floor. He stretches hard, and the moment his mind snaps back to that face-off with God, magic still crackles in his eyes. Leaning out of his room, he spots a blade gleaming like a threat, and memory slams him, his very first case. It's Donatella, the half-elf girl he freed, standing there, grinning like she owns the day, wishing him a good morning. He greets her with a clumsy, awkward grin as she tells him breakfast is almost ready. With a weary sigh, he can't help but wonder how his life ever spiraled into this. Just a quick glance from the side slips in, weariness and resignation settling into his face as he accepts his new life. In a flashback, the courtroom verdict lands. Donatella Bastionary is declared not guilty. Donatella was flooded with tears of joy and she blurted, "How could I ever repay you?" She thanks him, stunned out of her mind. She can't shake it because she truly thought she'd be dead. Yuga brushes off her gratitude with a casual wave, flashing a calm, reassuring smile. He leans in and tells her her beautiful smile is more than enough. Thank you for being there for him. He practically burst with joy because he finally got to fire off that cheesy line he'd been craving to use for ages. Rattled after the trial, Yuga stumbles through an awkward attempt to thank Donatella for saving him. She leans in and warns him, dead serious, among elves every debt gets repaid twice as much. She tells you, eyes steady, that this is a serious, deeply respected tradition among her people. It's a sacred cultural rule, every elf is honor-bound to follow it, no exceptions. Yuga freezes when he realizes his joke landed way too hard and he's crushed, knowing he can't even repay his life for it. Donatella meets his gaze with sincere eyes then asks, "Can I be your assistant?" Yuga gets absolutely blindsided, and all he can spit out is a raw, stunned gasp. Liliana grins, nodding like perfect, because this setup is exactly what Donatella needs to kick off her new life. Later, Yuga stares in pure confusion at his sudden, totally weird new housemate. He storms into the kitchen, and there's Donatella already in an apron like she's been ready for this the whole time. She tilts her head up at him and a wordless hey hangs between them, trembling in the silence. Yuga shot back, insisting she didn't need to stay with him just to lend a hand. She can't stop asking herself why the king handed them a house this big for both of them. He's dead set on this, it's just trouble for any young man and woman to move in together. Donatella figures that moving in together is the fastest, smartest way to keep serving him. She shrugs at the whole setup like it's totally fine, then shoots back, "What problem are you talking about?" Fed up to the bone, Yuga decides to fire off a blunt question, hoping it knocks the idea down for good. She answers so coolly, "I'm 14, that Yuga's jaw drops in full, total disbelief. He flicks his gaze to her fully grown body and she clocks it instantly, her chest is pretty much flat. She tells him the truth about elves, they shoot through adulthood fast yet their bodies age at a crawl-perfect survival magic. He reels inside, stunned he can't process that she's only 14. He's got a sick, uneasy feeling, like he's watching a 14-year-old get forced to steal her own youth as his assistant. She treats it like a sacred honor, but he's not fooled for a second. He thinks the king just needs it for his own convenience. More than anything, she's bursting with joy because she finally gets to help the one who saved her. Her heartfelt gratitude hits him like a wave, he's left completely flustered, speechless. He swats the air with a dismissive wave, telling her she's no trouble at all. He clocks that she's only half his age as she strides in and declares that breakfast is ready. She slaps a grotesque meal on the table and even admits it might be a little too heavy to stomach in the morning. Yuga could only freeze in sheer horror, staring at the total culinary disaster in front of him. He can't shake the feeling it doesn't look like cooking at all, it looks like he's about to desecrate a corpse. She finally admits it, she got swept up in the moment because it was her very first assignment as his assistant. As he shoves a bite into his mouth, she sweetly asks if the taste hits just right. It hits like a jolt of pure electricity, dropping you into a stunned, deadly silent shock. Later, they push through the roaring streets of a festive town market, where the whole place buzzes like it's alive. Donatella wears a sour, sulking face, still fuming over that disastrous cooking disaster. Yuga leans in to comfort her, urging her to stop spiraling and reminding her she doesn't have to feel this crushed. She shoots him an apology fast and makes it crystal clear her frustration isn't aimed at him at all. She feels completely worthless, like she can't even handle the simplest meal without messing it up. Suddenly, a tiny hooded kid slams right into Yoga in the middle of the crowd. The figure flashes a quick, casual apology, then darts straight into the chaos like they're disappearing mid-breath. Right then, two city guards burst onto the scene, screaming at him to grab the fleeing girl. The guard's furious curse spat out again and again, because that infamous thief had slipped away once more. He demanded Yuga tell him where the infamous young thief, Littlefoot, had disappeared to. Then someone else in the crowd blurts out that the girl isn't just anyone, she's a famous thief everyone knows. The second Yuga hears the word thief, horror snaps to life inside his head like a lights-out nightmare. A wave of brutal dread hits him, and without thinking, he grabs his neck. He blurts out a full-on cry of alarm, and it jolts Donatella in the crowd beside him. He panics and blurts to Donatella that someone ripped his precious necktie right out from under him. The crowd locks eyes on the hooded thief and watches him vanish down the packed street like a ghost. The guard whips his arm after her, yelling that she's slipping out of their grasp. As the guards thunder after him, a frantic Yuga bolts forward, desperate to make it in time. Donatella clocks it instantly, take that tie off, and his fighting spirit drains out of him like it never existed. She leans in, reassures him with steel in her eyes, and vows to prove her worth by jumping in right now to help him. She starts a chilling incantation, summoning an endless, silent sleep that won't let anyone wake. Yuga whips her head back, horrified that she even picked that spell, then she tells herself to wait. Her gloved hand erupts with dark power, and she keeps driving that crushing spell forward. With a blazing magic circle at her feet, she unleashes necromantic revival. The crowd erupts in shock and awe as magic suddenly explodes into view. He challenges her right then and there, daring her to explain why she'd blast such flashy magic in the middle of everyone's sight. Donatella snapped her eyes to him and ordered, plain and fierce, just watch. Down the street, the thief Mart sprints with zero doubt, already sure she'll slip out clean. She raises the stolen tie like a victory trophy, fully convinced she's slipped past everyone and gotten away with it. She flashes a confident smirk and scoffs, mocking how slow-witted humans are. She glances back at the guards way behind her, panic buzzing like, am I really that fast or are they just losing me? Suddenly, a weird sound rips up from below and she freezes, totally thrown off. A giant skeletal rib cage blasts up from the ground and traps her completely. She lets out a gut-wrenching scream, shaking with pure, unfiltered terror at the sight. She's locked inside those bones, screaming out, begging, what the hell are you? With Yuga finally back, his stolen necktie sprawls across the cobblestones right at his feet. Overwhelmed with relief, he snatches it up, sobbing and blurts, my necktie. He thanks Donatella 1,000 times over, stunned by her magic, and she beams, happy to help. Donatella watches him closely, then just says, straight up, that she really does appreciate his cooperation. Guards grabbed Marta, and when they did, they admitted they never could have caught her by themselves. Mart fires off a defiant shout, screaming that he's her parent and challenging his every claim about what he's supposed to do. The guard brushes her off coldly, while Yuga clocks that she's been using parent all along. The guard leans in and confirms it, these aren't their birth parents and that tie is officially cut. Baron King Hall swoops in, this wealthy merchant who once took Mart and other orphans under his wing. Mart sneers at him, shutting him down for talking like he's some grand philanthropist. She blasts him for taking in orphans just to forge them into loyal, shattered servants. A flashback slams in, kids are beaten mercilessly the second they so much as dare to resist. The orphans were made to hunt each other like little spies, snitching their way to rewards. King Hall boasts that these broken kids are his most dependable servants. Yuga reels in horror, snapping that this whole situation is cruel and completely twisted. Guard finally admits the discipline was brutal, but insists she still owes him one more debt. Marty scoffs at the very idea of gratitude and snaps at the ignorant man to shut up. She vows that no matter what, rebels like her will always fight back against brainwashing. Her eyes blaze with stubborn defiance, no force on earth can put them out. She whips around to Yuga and demands, "So tell me, what do you think happens to the dropouts?" With a chilling grin, she drops the truth: she and the others were sold straight to human traffickers. Marty unveils her brand and drops the bombshell: she doesn't even know what she was sold for. She thrashes in her bonds, shouting that her crime wasn't wrong, it was ruthless, justified revenge. A guard brushes off her claims of human trafficking as pure nonsense, laughing them off like they're absolutely ridiculous. A citizen insists the Baron can't possibly pull off something that monstrous, everyone respects him too much. Guards shoot each other worried glances, torn up inside, not knowing a single step forward. Marty steps in front of them and fires back, asking if they're really scared of the noble's crushing power. The guard snaps his gaze away and growls that no matter what she claims, stealing is stealing. They decide to haul her to the station, and they tell Yuga to just wait right there. Yuga steps up with a grim look and demands, "So what are you doing here?" He whips around to defiant Marde and tells her, straight to her face, there's something he has to get off his chest. He snaps his lucky tie into place, and his mind instantly gears up for the next legal war. Yuga shoots Marde a confident grin and tells the young thief she won't get punished. The city guards in Donatella gawked at him, utterly stunned by the wild declaration he just threw down. The senior guard fires back at Yuga, questioning his sympathy, then lays out that he's got multiple solid eyewitnesses to back it up. He slams his fist down and declares, no hesitation, Marty Kingle is a thief, period. Yuga leans in and demands, "Do you know Luanu's using Japanese law now?" The guard shoots back, "Yeah, she is." His partner grumbles while hauling the heavy law book, acting like taking automatically means stealing. With a razor-sharp grin, Yuga declares that this move will end everything fast. He lays it out plainly: under Japanese law, you can't just rip parental bonds apart that easily. Guards stare at each other, totally baffled by this legal argument. Yuga quotes the civil code, laying down the rule that you can't disinherit someone without the family court's permission. The freckle-faced guard frantically flips through the book, his eyes blazing as he confirms the law is real. Yuga lays it out flat: legally, Mart and the Baron are still parent and child. The guard keeps objecting, but Yuga drops a quote and shuts him down. Once again, the law won't cross the threshold of a home. He tells them straight up, family problems aren't someone else's job, parents have to step up and fix them. Yuka slams down his final, knockout argument. He cites Penal Code Article 244, Section 1 to seal the deal. He claims that a special rule for family means she can't be punished. The senior guard's jaw drops in disbelief. He can't believe a law this weird actually exists. Yuga admits the only way out is to return the stolen goods, calmly, properly, and with no drama. That freckle-faced guard blurts out, yanks Yuga to a stop, and tells him to hang on for a second. He leaned in and demanded Yuga explain how that girl just swiped his very own necktie right out from under him. Yuga shot an over-the-top gasp and fidgeted with the signature heart pattern tie at his collar. He slides the tie over Marty's neck like it's nothing, then smirks and insists she just dropped it. Mart glares up at him, then her defiance snaps off, replaced by stunned, breathless silence. Yuga steps up and promises to be her defense attorney the second this case hits the courtroom. Guards freeze in shock the moment they clock who he has to be. The crowd immediately spots him and yells, "It's the famous God-chosen lawyer Shiba Yuga." The senior guard finally admits it: no punishment can touch him, but the crime still counts. Yuga is totally rattled by that huge, over-the-top title, and he keeps muttering that it sounds absolutely ridiculous. The guard came right out and demanded he head to the station for questioning. When the guards spin back to their prisoner, they find nothing but an empty rope hanging there. They erupt in panic, screaming that she's just vanished into thin air. Yuga is left completely stunned when she vanishes, sudden, total, and like she was never there. Guards snap with frustration as they finally realize the truth: they've been played and she's slipped away. One demanded, "So what do we do now?" pointing at his partner's size and sheer resignation. They decide to report everything exactly as it happened. Then Yuga turns to Donatella and fires the question straight at him, "So is this your fault?" Later, Donatella leaned in and demanded to know if Yuga was genuinely fine with the result. She leans in and asks if that necktie isn't something that actually matters to him. He waves it away, smirking as he says she's only trying to make him look cool. She gives him a soft smile as she watches his body move on pure instinct, ready to shield itself before he even thinks. Yuga stares at it, realizing he only managed to get his tie back right before he froze in his tracks. He spots Marty for a split second as the guy barrels into him right through the crush of the crowd. Donatella spots his sudden stop and blurts out, "What's wrong?" Yuga's eyes flare wide as the truth snaps into place. He gasps hard and total shock flashes across his face. He tells Donatella that the girl who just shoulder bumped him is Marty. He realizes she came back just to hand his tie to him, tossing it back with a gift like it was nothing short of a message. Marty darts away into the crowd, grinning like he's got a secret. Yuga peered down and spotted a massive, gleaming gold ingot sitting right there by his necktie. The story rips us straight into the massive, throne-steeped royal castle of Luanu, so grand it feels like it's daring you to blink. Princess Vivian makes it crystal clear, 2 criminals slip free all because of that lawyer. Prosecutor Joan and a rival nobleman face off before her, both frozen as they wait for her verdict. Joan nods and tells them her summary of what's happening is dead on. The princess hums to herself, her fans snapping up to hide whatever expression she's trying to keep hidden. She snaps that this lawyer is poisoning her dream for the country, nothing but a nuisance getting in her way. Fresh chapter kicks off as a sinister, shadow-choked mansion looms at night. Inside, one man lies lifeless on a bed, while another stands over him like he just finished something unforgivable. The standing man wipes a bead of sweat from his face as shock hits him, and he stares down, stunned. His eyes bulge wide, terror and disbelief crashing over him at the sight before him. His gloved hands start to shake as he stares at the body in front of him. He whispers in pure horror to himself, realizing he's done it. He grabs his chest, freezes for a beat, then still steals his courage back just to move forward with what he's about to do. He tries to swallow his horror whole and tells himself that what he did was justice. Clutching a flower pin in his hand, he swears it's for Luanu and pushes his plan to the finish. Next morning, Yuga's right there, just standing like he's ready and waiting for his trial. We get a big, dramatic look at the grand mansion where Yuga now lives, straight from the outside. Yuga jolts upright in bed, rubbing his eyes in a daze as the morning finally hits. He stumbles out of his room, grumbling that his throat feels completely dry. He groans and calls out, begging for a glass of water. He accidentally stumbles in on Donatella as she's changing into her undergarments. He slams to a stop mid-stride, and shock hits his face like lightning. He stammers through it, scrambling to insist his intrusion wasn't meant to happen. Teary-eyed, Donatella admits she crashed from pure exhaustion after pulling an all-night shift. Overwhelmed, Yuga slams a hole through the wall, screaming at her to get out, right now. Liliana shows up a few moments later and finds the doorway wrecked right where it shouldn't be. She snaps back asking, "That's it," then hammers the whole scene as ridiculous and downright childish. She snaps at Donatella for throwing offensive magic around, and Donatella hangs her head and blurts out a meek, heartfelt apology. That huge smoking crater blasted through the wall screams one thing: the magic is terrifyingly powerful. Liliana snaps at Yuga, telling him to stop sneaking peeks, because if he keeps it up he won't make it out alive. Donatella shot out an apology and admitted it was her first time living with someone who wasn't family. She straight up admits that men have desires, and Yuga snaps back that it was all his fault, every bit of it. Yuga stared at the wreckage and it hit him, this magic was on a whole other level of terrifying power. Liliana scoffs and tells him, straight to his face, that he has absolutely no clue about how this world works. She leans in and says that only a tiny chosen few, people born with a special gift, can even use magic. Yuga blurts out shocked, "Wait, Donatella's really that incredible?" Liliana proves her power on the spot, and her impressive elven bloodline practically screams through every move. She flat out declares Donatella is an absolute genius. Yuga lavishes praise on his talented assistant, and Donatella can't help but blush, squirming with embarrassment. Donatella thrusts an offer toward Liliana T, but Liliana shuts it down fast, she's got no time to rest. Liliana blurted in panic that a royal command has just chosen Yuga's next case. She tells him the trial's tomorrow, and he has to rush to meet the defendant right away. They slam into the prison gates, and there it towers, an enormous, intimidating stone fortress that feels impossible to break. Yuga leans in and demands what Liliana knows. She shoots back that it's her duty. She leans in and tells you she's heard rumors, straight from the castle staff. She drops the bombshell that the defendant is Ranette Galvia, and Yuga's completely stunned. Liliana leans in and confirms he heard her right. She straight up confirms he's the nobleman's son, the same one from Donatella's very first trial. The fast-cut montage slams us with Lord Galvia's arrogant mustache and smug, punchable smirk. Liliana leans in with a grim voice and declares that Renette is being charged with murder. She realizes it's insanely rare to see a noble get dragged into a crime accusation. With murder charges thrown down, the entire royal castle erupts into chaos. While they're on the move, Royal Guard Knight Liliana drops a grim warning straight to Yuga. Donatella and Liliana flank Yuga as he drifts off, clearly lost in thought. Liliana straight up tells him that he's next, the world's resentment is coming for him too. Yuka flashes a smirk, refusing to show any crack, and vows to move forward with ruthless caution. They slam up to the royal prison's towering, heavily barred gates. A young man with wavy hair slams the scene with a furious shout, insisting over and over that he's totally innocent. He slams his foot through the bars, snarling for his release right now. Yuga eyes up his arrogant new client, the accused murderer himself, Renette Galvia. He sits down, stays stone calm, and tells everyone he's going to lay out the case facts one by one. The victim is revealed Kara Velksman, a young widow tied to the landowner she just lost. She'd been living tucked away in her country mansion, alone in silence, no one to keep her company. A servant stumbled on her lifeless body sprawled in the mansion's bedroom. Yuga confirms a servant actually saw Renette slip out of the scene. Renette says his alibi really kicks off from that exact make-or-break moment. He tells you the truth, he and his brother Rudiger had gone hunting that very day. As dusk rolled in, he got cut off and wandered the area, completely lost and alone. Right as he was about to step out, he suddenly thought he'd been spotted by a servant. Through the window, the servant clocked his suspicious presence lurking nearby. Renette slams the final word down and swears up and down he's never even laid eyes on the victim. Don't try to dismiss him like a skeptic, because if that's all his story, then something's seriously missing. She cuts him off with a blunt truth. His explanation is about as believable as a lie you can't even hide. She tells him to stop with that lame excuse and actually come up with something better. Renette erupts in a storm of rage, furious that a long-eared elf dares to question him. Yuga panics, scrambling to hush Donatella before she sets the nobleman off for good. He blurts out fast, cutting in to say she's nothing but his assistant. Renette scoffs at the whole idea, and the moment she hears about an elf assistant, she can't help but find it laughably ridiculous. He sneers and declares she's nothing but Yuga's sex slave, not some real professional. Yuga realizes that an angry Donatella isn't just mad, she's downright deadly. Donatella looks honestly baffled when she hears the words sex slave. You should pivot the convo back to the point and press them for the full details. He leaned in and told Renette to confirm one thing, then he never set foot inside the mansion. Yuga sits there thinking like, without footprints they'd have zero proof left. Renette drops into a tense, suspicious silence the moment that question hits her. He suddenly snaps and blasts Yuga with a shout that none of it matters. Yuga's mouth drops shut as his client's wild, bizarre outburst leaves him completely speechless. Renette lashes out at his own lawyer, blasting him for doubting Renette's innocence. Yuga blurts out that those questions are the only way to mount a real defense. Renette snaps "I'm done," and spins away yelling that he's going to rest. As they shove him out of the cell block, Yuga's spirit collapses, he's completely crushed. Liliana's waiting there eyeing them as she fires off. So, is the meeting over? Yuga panics and blurts that he never gave her a real story to work with. He throws himself at the door, begging her to let him back in, and even slips up, calling her by the wrong name. Liliana lets out a heavy, weary sigh, watching him completely fall apart in pure panic. She snaps that she already warned him to watch his step. Yuga crumples in frustration, drowning in the chaos of his impossible client. He shoots one more glare toward the cell, still stunned by that man, like none of it can possibly add up. A respectful voice cuts in mid-moment, demanding to know if he's really the legendary Lord Shibeyudo. A handsome young nobleman flashes a disarming smile and introduces himself like he already owns the room. Rudiger Gelvia is the one who steps up and thanks Yuga for risking everything to defend his brother. Liliana's jaw drops when she sees him, so she's left wondering why he's skipping his duties. You guys jumped back as the polite young man lifted both hands toward you. Rudiger tells him straight up, sure, his brother has a rough mouth but deep down he's got a good heart. He begs Yuga with everything he's got, trying to make sure his brother gets a lighter sentence somehow. Flustered beyond words, Yuga blurts out a shaky promise, he'll do his absolute best. As Rudiger storms out, Liliana can't help but point out just how wildly different the two brothers really are. Yuga straight up admits they're total opposites, and Liliana can't help but find that seriously weird. She lays it out, one brother is a total screw-up and the other is a standout prodigy. Renette's a delinquent who ditched school and ran straight to the street thugs to gamble her future away. Rudiger, the complete opposite, crushes school like a machine, top marks all the way, and a spotless reputation everyone trusts. Liliana lays it out, the Galvia clan is terrifyingly powerful, and now everyone's whispering that Renette's succession could spark disaster. With her duty finally done, Liliana turns away from Yoga and readies herself to return to his case. Yuka slams the brakes on him and blurts out, "I need to ask you a favor." Liliana snaps her gaze back at him, eyebrows raised, totally hooked by the bold request. The story cuts to a massive, endless forest stretching for miles beneath a gloomy, overcast sky. A lone carriage rumbles down an empty country road, the silence screaming louder with every mile. Inside, Yuga leans toward the window, staring out like he's reading the map of nowhere. This mansion sits in the middle of nowhere. He realizes you can only reach that place by horseback. Donatella stares him down, demanding to know if he's got a plan. She nails it, he's desperate to get back to the crime scene, and she's convinced Renette didn't do it. Yuga straight up admits that, with that attitude of hers, Renette doesn't look like a killer at all. Donatella keeps pushing him, grilling him like, "So you really came all this way, did you have a plan?" He yells that he's got no such plan, then his voice cuts out mid-sentence. As a lawyer, he lays down his core rule: he has to believe his client is innocent. He's hunting for any clue he can find at the Valksmana estate ahead. Donatella jabs a finger at the lone mansion ahead, declaring, "That's our destination." Yuga hops out of the carriage and cautiously calls toward the house. An elderly maid suddenly steps in and demands to know if they're with the military investigation. With a tired look on her face, she steps forward and introduces herself as a servant of the house. She ushers everyone into a parlor and warmly welcomes the master lawyer in like they've been expecting him all along. Yuga blurts out, why would she bring the lawyer in for her mistress's killer? The maid flashes back, "I don't mind at all," and somehow that calm, quiet answer feels way too strange. She lays out the house's tragic end, because in just moments, new owners are moving in and taking it over. Yuga leans in and asks her to recount everything about the day of the murder. She nods along, even though she's already spilled that same story to the military again and again. She kicks things off by admitting that she'd been dead asleep in this tiny outbuilding right on the property. A thunderous neigh exploded from somewhere nearby, jolting her awake in an instant. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone must have taken a wrong turn and gotten stranded out there, way too late in the night. She yanked a shawl over her shoulders and stepped outside to uncover what was going on. Hiding behind the main gate, she peered through the crack and spotted a stranger waiting at the front door. A man stormed out of the mansion, and his horse waited calmly beside a lamp. She instantly knew that man was Lord Renette Govia. She clung to her hiding spot, watching him swing into the saddle and gallop away into the distance. She let out a shaky breath of relief, and for the moment it was gone from her mind. She marched into the main house, hunting for her mistress and making sure she was okay. She shouted her mistress's name at the top of her lungs and got nothing back. She burst into the bedroom, and her mistress was already lifeless, cold as ice. Alone and locked out of any way to call the military, she just clenched her teeth and waited for morning to finally arrive. Donatella cuts in and tells them to hold up, just for a second. She leaned in and demanded the maid verify that Renette had already slipped out of the mansion. The maid nods and declares it's true, her words rock solid, like she won't bend for a single second. Yuga's eyes narrow in profile, locked on the truth. This mansion has the key and he knows it. Donatella nods in agreement while Yuga groans, wrestling with the heavy burden of the case. He leaned in with perfect manners and asked the head maid for permission to see the crime scene. Of course, she swings the door open and leads them into that quiet, grand mansion. Yuga freezes in the room and it hits him, this is the exact spot where someone died. He clutched his hands together, lost in silent thoughts, while Donatella stared at him, utterly confused. Donatella rips through the wardrobe, eyes widening as she realizes the guards even snatched the clothes off the hangers. Yuga leaned in and demanded the maid spill it. Did anything get stolen, and if so, what? From what she's saying, it's confirmed, nothing valuable was stolen. Donatella stands beside the bed, staring at it like something about all of this just can't be real. The more she digs, the worse it gets, like hope is slipping out of her hands. Since they didn't get anything worth stealing, she's left with no choice but to shut down the whole robbery plan. She figures the old woman didn't stand a chance, no strength to fight back at all. Renette's excuse that he got lost with his brother sounds way too shaky to buy. She's certain Renette is the killer, but then Yuga snaps with a sudden idea. He refuses to hear a word she says, his eyes stay locked on something else across the room. He whips around and fires a strange question at the head maid, right about Ms. Kara. He blurts out, what if she never even owned a hand mirror? Whoa, she gasped like she'd seen a ghost, and yeah, I was the one helping her with it this morning. Donatella leans in and asks what's wrong, because the moment she sees that sudden spark of realization in his eyes, she knows something just clicked. Yoga suddenly stops in his tracks and declares with iron certainty that something is missing from this mansion. He's convinced that this missing object is the exact key he needs to break through and defend himself. Donatella's mind just can't keep up with his sudden, weird questions. She's completely thrown. The day of the trial finally crashes into the grand castle of Luanu. The courtroom is overflowing, and King Marius sits there while a stern woman presides over everything. Yoga watches from the sidelines, convinced this is about to be the handsome assistant's very first fight. Prosecutor Joan Wyson stands poised and unshakable, his face carved from ice and certainty. A wave of whispers sweeps through the gallery as everyone spots the stunning woman who just walked in. You get a close-up of this fancy decorative detail in the courtroom's architecture. On his towering throne, King Marius steadies himself and gets ready to kick off the proceedings. Princess Vivienne slips in a sharp remark. She can't remember the last time her father showed up. The king makes the announcement with a grin. His daughter is going, and she's doing it by her own request. The princess rallies everyone to give it their all and carry out their duties with everything they've got. The noble steps forward and calls out the legendary God-chosen lawyer, Sheba Court. The princess sinks into her seat, eyes sharp, ready to watch the trial unfold. All right, court is in session, she snaps, eyes blazing as she sizes everything up. In a shadowy alley, a gloved hand slides a flower emblem pin toward him. Rudiger Gelvia stared at the cloaked figure, then demanded to know what on earth it was. The figure leans in and says it's proof that joining their cause means you'll always be carried with them. The figure insists their every move is aimed at one thing, Luano's prosperity. Rudiger clenched the pin in his hand, determination blazing across his face as he vowed to finish the mission. Right now, Prosecutor Jones fires off his opening statement, and the whole courtroom braces for what's coming next. He makes it crystal clear, Renette Galvia killed Kara Valksman. He stares at the defendant and can't find a single shred of remorse. He whips his gaze to the king and the princess, readying his demand like it's about to explode from his mouth. Using Penal Code 199, he steps forward and officially demands the death penalty. The whole gallery gasps in pure shock, stunned by just how brutal the sentence they demanded really is. When they say death penalty, Renette erupts in a scream. She calls it a ridiculous joke and she means it. Yoga feels the moment crushing down on him. Renette's life is hanging by a thread. Renette digs in, swearing he's innocent, and calling the death penalty pure nonsense. He rages on, insisting the whole case boils down to the word of a single old woman. The gallery scoffs and can't believe anyone would ever trust someone like that. Joan coolly insists that Renette swears she's never even met the victim. He snaps his head to the king and makes a proper, no-nonsense request to bring a witness in. Rudiger Galvia, the defendant's own brother, strides up to the witness stand. Renette and Donatella stood frozen, their faces wearing pure, jaw-dropping shock. Rudiger Renette stammers, "Why are you two here right now?" Rudiger snaps to his brother that he can't ever forget his honor as a Galvia. He pushes Renette to spill the truth, even if it wrecks their family's name. Rudiger strides up to the king and launches into the story of what he just witnessed, spilling the truth to the whole court. His testimony whips you straight back to that day he went hunting in the forest. Renette leaned in and demanded to know about the stunning Valksman widow who lived just down the road. Rudiger can't help but remember thinking she'd been married off to a man decades younger than her. He couldn't shake the thought that it was a total waste for her to hide away in isolation. As they keep talking deep in the woods, the sky looms overhead. Later on, a lost Renette burst crying for his brother, shouts into the thick, tangled woods. He's blown away when the Valksman mansion suddenly appears through the trees. Concern flickers across his face as he strides up to the estate. On horseback, he spots his brother on the porch and yells his name at the top of his lungs. A nearby servant spies him instantly and panic hits as they think, "I'm being watched." Renette thinks it's already late, but she's betting everything will stay calm. Rudiger steps into the stand and swears his brother vanished before he even learned about the murder. He straight up swears he saw his brother storm out of the mansion with his very own eyes. He bows low and Prosecutor Jones, shaken by his power, thanks him for that knockout testimony. Joan smirked as she clocked it, this was the sworn word of a respected nobleman. Renette snarls and grinds Sean's plans to dust because his alibi gets totally obliterated. Joan leans in and asks whether the defense has any cross-examination questions lined up for Rudiger. Renette whips around to Yuga, pleading for him to pull out whatever trick he's got. He rips into his lawyer, demanding they smash the testimony and prove he's innocent. The gallery sneers at him, convinced that his desperate outburst is the smoking gun. Yuga locks eyes with his client and in a voice calm as ice, asks if he's really serious. "Yeah, I am," Renette bellows, "now stop stalling and get moving." Yuga shoots the question, "Are you really good with using whatever it takes?" Donatella watches the tense exchange unfold, and worry tightens across her face. Joan Wyson watches the defense closely, and a cold, razor-sharp look hardens in his eyes. Renette nods and tells Yuga to stop wasting time, hurry up and get him acquitted. Yuga grins and says, "If I'm this set on it, then everything's gonna work out, no doubt." He yanks his lucky heart pattern tie into place, and with that tiny snap his resolve locks in. A cocky grin snaps onto his face as he confidently declares, "I can win." Rudiger leans in from the stands as Yuga steps up and drops his bold claim like a challenge. Donatella throws a shocked question at Yuga, does he honestly think they can pull off a win? After the trial, Yuga demands a private word with Rudiger and Rudiger nods, "Okay, let's talk." He tells me he went into that huge, deep forest himself and saw it with his own eyes. He demanded to know if Rudiger really just stumbled on the person there by pure luck. Rudiger flashes a grin and says he totally figured Yuga would come asking him that. He straight up confesses he already knew about Kara and her womanizing brother before all of this ever started. He was rushing to the same spot when he spotted his brother pulling up first. Donatella leans in, listening hard, and admits his tale isn't as bizarre as it sounds. Renette was spotted slipping out, so it looks like Rudiger's testimony truly holds water. Rudiger stayed stone calm and pressed Donatella, asking if he had said even one lie. Renette clenched his teeth hard, his face twisting into pure, desperate denial. He clamps his fist tight, swearing through clenched teeth that he's no murderer. He snaps, furiously accusing his brother, Rudiger, of setting him up to steal the inheritance. Rudiger watches with a heavy, unshakable heart, convinced this is the only way forward. Yuga strides in and tells the stunned Renette to calm down, right now. He stands tall and declares, full confidence blazing, that his client's claim makes perfect sense. Yuga won't let anyone brush off the idea that Renette got framed. Prosecutor Jones snorts at the defense's claim, calling it rude, pointless, and utterly without proof. Jones smirks and taunts, asking if they're really pointing the blame straight at noble Rudiger himself. Yuga just flashes a calm smile and shrugs, saying he's only doing what he's been hired to do. Joan calls him out, saying he's trying to blur the truth with nothing to back it up. Joan decides to throw down his own evidence, and it shocks Donatella. He storms in with total confidence and declares, "I've got decisive physical evidence, ready for you right now." Yugo locks in with a razor-sharp stare, watching every move like he's hunting for a weakness. The prosecutor snaps at a guard to fetch the key evidence right now. Joan told them they tore through the defendant's home inside the Capitol. They tracked it down inside a dusty storeroom, and when they found it, everything changed. An officer strides up with a tray and on it, her bra and panties laid bare for everyone to see. The gallery buzzes with confused whispers, staring at that bizarre evidence like it doesn't make sense. They can't wrap their heads around it. Why in the world does women's underwear even belong in a murder trial? Joan declares this is the evidence that's about to seal the trial's fate. He reveals the undergarments are Kara Valksman's, belonging to the victim. Renette's face twists in pure shock the moment he hears the victim's name. Joan demands answers, stunned that the victim's belongings somehow ended up inside Renette's home. He claims Renette treated it like a grim trophy, proof of his crime, clutched in her hands. The crowd erupts in stunned disbelief, then slides into pure disgust at the prosecutor's theory. Cornered and shattered, Renette grips his head, panicking so hard he can't even mount a defense. Donatella watches Renette unravel in real time, totally stunned and completely lost. She locks onto the damning proof and realizes it means Renette truly slipped into the mansion. She tells Yuga they can't protect him anymore, and Yuga just nods, calm as ever, even as the danger closes in. To her shock, Yuga grins and bursts out, "We just won." Yuga rises to his feet and fires a bold question straight at the prosecutor, who's still frozen in shock. He demanded to know if the prosecutor's search of the home had been truly thorough. Then he fired off one plain question, wasn't there more asterisk to uncover? Yuga clarifies he wants even more underwear, and it leaves Joan totally baffled. Joan confirms they just found 16 more sets, and every single one traces back to the victim. Donatella clenches her teeth, terrified this twist only makes the prosecution's case stronger. Yuga lifts a finger, ready to fire off one last game-changing question. He grilled them, asking whether they'd found any underwear that clearly wasn't the victim's. Joan counts out 211 pieces, and the entire crowd explodes into pure chaos. Yuga fires off the question, barking at the prosecutor to stop pretending he doesn't know anything. He keeps pushing the prosecution's claim that the underwear was a trophy. He points out loud and clear that those 211 pieces weren't meant for just one person, they belong to many. Joan blurts out, wondering if Reinet's actually the kind of serial killer who can't get a single thing right. Yuga yells that the murder and the underwear have absolutely nothing to do with each other. Turns out the real target wasn't the person, it was the underwear itself. He rips into Reinet, claiming she didn't break in to kill, she broke in just to swipe his underwear. The moment this bizarre truth hits, the whole gallery is left staring in total shock, unable to speak. A gut punch accusation slams into the silent courtroom, and the whole place feels like it's holding its breath. The prosecutor's jaw drops in shock, his entire case is falling apart at the seams. Yuga declares loud and clear that his client is nothing but an underwear thief. The crowd erupts into stunned murmurs, scrambling to make sense of the wild, impossible crime. Joan and Donatella can't believe it. Who in their right mind would steal something this worthless? Yuga suddenly realizes the common sense rules from his own world don't work here at all. He straightens his tie, getting ready to school the clueless prosecutor. He leans in and explains what a fetish is to a courtroom that's totally baffled. Reinet snaps at Yuga, and the moment she yells, she accidentally confirms that those people really exist. Yuga tells Donatella, those items aren't for show, use them. In the gallery, a woman spits out her disgust, calling the whole concept repulsive. The crowd can't even wrap their heads around it. This nobleman's got a fetish no one expected. Reinet's cheeks blaze as she mutters through her blush that he's acting like a total pervert. When Donatella locks eyes on him, he panics and blurts out a frantic denial. Yuga leans in and corners his client until they finally crack and confess, proud as a knight for the job. He lays out the legal stakes in plain terms, saying murder isn't some minor crime, it's on the same level as theft, just with far darker consequences. He lays Reinet an ultimatum, save his life or watch his pride get crushed forever. Reinet's tears start to spill as the impossible choice crushes him. Joan coldly asks if he'd really throw his life away, just for some underwear. Reinet murmurs his shattered confession, and finally gives in to the point. Yuga snaps that he needs everyone to hear him, demanding he speak up loud enough for the whole court to catch it. Reinet clenches his fists and fights back with everything he's got in that last, desperate moment. He finally erupts with his confession, screaming it loud enough for the whole courtroom to hear. The judge leaned in and demanded he spell out his exact preferences, no vague answers allowed. Reinet blushes and admits he only has a soft spot for underwear that belongs to beautiful women. Yuga smirks, grinning like a villain, and admits he stole them the very day the murder happened. He admits that the moment he heard about the beautiful widow, he just couldn't resist. The crowd in the gallery recoils in disgust yet can't look away, locked in a creepy mix of horror and fascination. Yuga can't believe the prideful nobleman is actually owning up to his fetish in public. Yuga tells Reinet point-blank that his shame over what he'd done is exactly why he buried the stolen goods in the first place. Yuga snaps, telling him to speak louder because he's convinced it all got ruined thanks to him. Yuga grilled Reinet to swear right there that he was the one who did it. From her hidden box, Princess Vivian watches the bazaar explode into motion right before her eyes. She clocks that Reinet has finally spilled why he was even there at the scene. The king slams his verdict down and declares everyone at the scene a suspect. The princess snaps her fierce gaze onto the person who's been watching her. She squares up to Rudiger on the spot, then presses him to hit back with a real rebuttal. Rudiger's panic erupts as he begs them to hold up, just for a second. He grips his pins so tight his knuckles burn, swearing up and down that what he did was for the country. His eyes flare wide with raw terror as the truth hits, he's trapped and there's no way out. The princess smirks with icy malice while Rudiger snaps his head up, staring in pure horror. He starts wondering if the princess is pulling the strings behind all of this. Bone-chilling power blasts out of the princess's eye like ice itself. A silent, invisible blast slams into the witness, right out of nowhere. Yuga and Donatella feel the courtroom's vibe snap and twist like something big is about to go down. Rudiger jolted with a sudden gasp, clutching his chest as agony crashed through him. Princess locks eyes on him and her stare turns ice cold. Nothing, not even him, can soften it. He chokes up and starts to crumple to the ground. Renette blurted out her brother's name in panic, eyes wide with shock and confusion. Rudiger's eyes roll up and in an instant he drops into full unconsciousness. He topples off the witness stand and slams onto the courtroom floor with a deafening crash. The king bellows for a doctor and just like that, chaos detonates across the court. Renette Galvia stares from the witness stand, totally blindsided by the instant the story flips on its head. His brother Rudiger suddenly crumples forward, slumping hard over the wooden witness box. A tiny white, pill-shaped thing skitters in total silence across the checkered courtroom floor. In a grand, echoing hall, a retainer barges in and snaps the trial's verdict to Princess Vivienne. He leans in and tells her smugly that Rudiger Gelvia has conveniently blanked the entire incident from his mind. Vivienne thinks the fool should have been wiped out cleanly, if they had to be killed at all. The retainer leans in and asks if she's happy, and she answers with a quick, confident nod. Renette is left reeling, stuck wondering how he'll ever look the world in the eye after that humiliating confession. Just as Yuga catches his breath, the princess's retainer shows up and delivers a terrifying warning straight from his mistress. Yuga just flashes a defiant smirk, refusing to flinch as he quietly accepts the deadly political challenge. From her balcony, Princess Vivienne leans on the rail, staring out and can't stop thinking about what to do with this brand new pawn. Yuga leans in to lift Reynad's spirits and flat out declares his creed: he doesn't let enemies live. In a side-splitting moment, a Chibai Yuga groans about how his stressful courtroom debut is already wrecking him. He blurts out a burning question: what the heck is the full book of Luano law really all about? He figures it's probably nothing more than a translated version of Japan's 6 codes. Liliana tells you it's a special edition blessed by God, and every single page is written completely in Japanese. Yuga barely even blinks as he flips through the thick, familiar pages, bored like, is that all? God Girl straight up confirms it's just a regular law book, no special treatment, no shortcuts. The world drops away into a screaming cosmic void, and a wild, colorful new chapter bursts to life. Yuga drifts through a glittering ocean of stars, and that lucky tie has somehow turned into a headband. He jerks himself upright in that eerie void, totally scrambled and baffled by where he's landed. He grips his pounding head, panicking as he tries to drag the party's memories back from the blur. In a flash, he jolts awake and realizes he's dropped into a weird, totally unfamiliar place. Right in front of him, her cheerful smile pops up out of nowhere, like the God Girl just appeared out of thin air. She rushes right up to him, fires off an excited thumbs up, and basically celebrates the fact that he's crushed it. Yuga snaps back in shock, completely thrown off when she suddenly closes the distance, way too fast, way too close. Once he finally steadied himself, he dragged out a tired breath and asked what she wanted from him. She flashes a bright grin, swings her hands in the air, and tells them she has no real reason for coming. Yuga's clearly fed up, because she's got nothing meaningful left to tell him. She admits she just had to see for herself how he was really holding up. She relives his win in vivid detail, and suddenly Reynette's face from the courtroom flashes in her mind, pure shock. She breaks into cheers over his incredible win, acquittals in 2 brutal, head-splitting cases. She even praises him for hauling Donatella out of an unjust, bogus arrest. God Girl also remembers the moment he saved young thief Marty. She crowns his performance as a lawyer with a loud win, then calls him her master. Flustered, Yuga snaps at her not to get cocky, but the smile on his face gives him away. She gives him a sharp warning: never forget that Luanu's customs don't work like his. He grimaces hard, vividly reliving that hostile, prejudice-filled gallery from his very first trial. He tells her, "Don't worry, I'll handle it," but her face screams that doubt still won't let go. With a bright wave, she calls out that she's slammed with work and has to get moving right now. She tells them, "I've got to head out right now and hand a quest to the heroes' party." Just as an intrigued Yuga starts to ask about the heroes, she's already turning to leave. A blinding white flash crashes down, swallowing him whole and snapping him out of that wild dream. Glow dies down, ripping him out of the cosmic void and slamming him back into reality. His eyes fly open with a violent jolt as he jerks awake. He jolts upright in his fancy bed, swearing that that weird encounter was nothing but a dream. He mutters under his breath that it probably wasn't a dream after all. He shrugs off the fact that a god showed up at his bedside, calling it just another mind-bending oddity. Donatella struts in, beaming as she hands him a flawless, glistening white pudding that practically sparkles. The dessert trembles a little, like it's bragging about her brand-new, seriously impressive cooking skill. She lifts a saucer high in the air, grinning as she shows off her masterpiece, successful, delicious, and ready to be devoured. She beams and tells him, all bright-eyed, that she baked a seriously amazing pudding just for him. She flashes a warm smile, calls out good morning, and slides the dish right into his hands. Yuga looked deathly pale, struggling to summon even a shaky, strained greeting back. Donatella's smile dies the moment she clocks his terrible complexion, then she leans in and demands, "What's wrong with you?" She leans in with a warm platter of fresh food and asks, "Are you okay?" She starts chewing him out for downing drinks with Renette, yet Renette is still a minor. The reminder snaps Yuga's hand to his head, and a fresh wave of nausea crashes over him. He groans and begs her to use healing magic, but she sadly tells him she can't. With a grin, she dares him to let her cure him by draining his life force using necromancy. After they finish eating, she urges them to hit the town and grab the medicine. Yugo can't stop worrying about the price because he's got zero health insurance to fall back on. Then it hits him, he remembers the massive reward money he pocketed straight from the king's coffers. Donatella leans in and reassures him, saying that just 1 UN will be more than enough to cover the cost. In a quick aside, the god girl leans in and lays out the generous exchange rate for you, like it's a secret worth knowing. Donatella bursts in like a command center, saying she's already made breakfast, and she demands he sit down and eat, no arguments. A shiny silver cloche plops on the dining table, guarding the delicious masterpiece she just made. She rolls the serving card right up to the table and confidently declares, "This meal today, it's gonna be amazing." She slaps her chest with pride, bragging that she can grill meat like nobody's business. She pries the lid open and there it is, a thick slab of meat bubbling away in a hot, writhing liquid. Yuga freezes, eyes locked on that bizarre bubbling dish, with pure horror written all over his face. He jabs a finger and demands what's cooking in there. She grins and says it's sauce. They strode down a charming cobblestone lane, where timber-framed buildings crowded both sides like they'd been waiting for a story. Donatella tells us to do a still queasy yoga routine and then points out a highly respected shop just around the corner. She tells you this shop isn't just peddling medicine, it also fixes every kind of machinery people drag in. Yuga mumbles that right now, all he cares about is one thing: medicine. They roll up to a building crowned with a gear-stuffed sign that screams Yorazuya. Donatella slowly shoves the heavy wooden door aside, leaning in to peer into the shop's shadows. She raises her voice with a warm, respectful greeting, cutting through the cluttered, dim silence inside. She calls out asking if anyone's home, while Yuga clocks the shop's total chaos all around him. A tiny kid in oversized goggles suddenly bursts up from behind the wooden counter. A young girl in a lab coat shoves her goggles up and demands to know what they're doing here. Yuga can't stop wondering, could this super energetic young girl actually be the one running the whole show? He's left totally stunned, words evaporating the moment she hits him with that sudden, straight-to-the-point way of hers. She shoots him a dismissive smirk and dares him to not underestimate her. She proudly brags that she graduated from the Royal University at just 14 years old. She snaps into a dramatic pose and can't wait to rattle off every one of her jaw-dropping academic credentials. She lays it out: this modern era is a tangled battlefield, and you've got to master a bunch of different skills just to keep up. She rattles off her studies, starting with medicine and engineering, then flipping the switch to magic and the literary arts. She says that at some point, people finally latched onto one super-specific title for her. She spins around with a dramatic snap, ripping her long twin tails through the air as she turns her back on them. She steps forward and declares she's the omnipotent one, Exiled, the genius inventor who's changing the rules of reality. Yuga stammers out apologies while Donatella claps, totally entertained by the girl's over-the-top performance. Exiled flashed a satisfied grin at their reaction, then leaned in and asked again what they'd really come for. She climbs onto a stool, arms thrown wide, and confidently declares she can build anything she wants. She ushers them in and tells them, "Say what you want, ask for anything," like it's their moment to demand the impossible. Yuga looks utterly wrecked, claps a hand over his mouth and fights to hold back the vomit. He quietly begged for hangover medicine, admitting he'd hit his breaking point. He's stuck in agony while Exiled spins toward her workbench, ready to craft the cure. She slides a gloved hand onto a perfectly prepared package sitting right on her desk. With that brutal hangover finally gone, Griselda leans in and tells Yuga the tab is 2,000 yen. She feels him still there and blurts out, "Are you mad at me?" Yuga clamps a hand to his neck and shoots it down instantly, then just stands there staring, totally blown away by her insane skill. She boldly swears a sacred oath, she'll heal every sick person who crosses her path. Yuga is so blown away he can't stop praising her as amazing, and Donatella nods like, "Yeah, for a kid, that's genuinely impressive." Griselda snaps at him, warning him to stick to the exact right dosage for every single medicine. A fresh customer walks in, and before Yuga can blink, she snaps that he should get out if his business is already done. A smooth-talking gangster strides in, zeroing in on the room and demanding to know if Griselda is here. Yuga instantly clocks the man's tried-and-true low-level gangster look. Griselda leans out from behind the counter, locks eyes with him and asks what he wants. The man smirks, then the truth snaps into focus. He's an envoy for the infamous Baron King Hall. Yuga's eyes go wide as memories slam back. He remembers that disgusting human trafficker from a past case. The gangster marched right up to Griselda, crowding her space and demanding the new drug he'd commissioned. She admits the deadline is brutal, especially since he never even bothered to reach out. He towers over her and with a sharp, daring stare, he demands she admit she actually failed. She shoots him a defiant glare and tells him, "Don't mess with me." Then she points, because the drug's right here waiting. But her defiance only grows stronger as she refuses to hand it over. He breaks down the drug's power, sharpening your focus while wiping away pain and fear like it never existed. He admits it comes with brutal side effects, but he swears it could still pull countless patients out of trouble. Yuga snaps to the truth, this is a combat drug, and his gut tightens as he wonders if King Hall is really trying to sell it. Griselda slips up and admits it. When she took that commission, she was nothing but a naive kid. A sudden flashback smashes open the truth. The masked king wasn't just royalty, he was the arms dealer she'd never seen coming. The memory paints his silhouette against an open field, and that shape screams the truth, his power. The way it's drawn screams one thing: he's planning to sell her masterpiece as a weapon of war. Griselda snaps that she'll never let her medicine be used for something like that. The envoy sneers at her and orders her to come back only after she finally understands how the world really works. Donatella seethes with one brutal truth: nothing feels worse than watching your war end in defeat. She swears she'd burn the whole world down just to win, but her words fizzle out mid-breath. Yuga gets completely swept up in the moment, and Griselda's noble ideals hit him so hard that tears spill before he can even hold them back. He blares his sobs, trembling with fury as he declares using that drug for war is dead wrong. Tracers, Griselda tried to stand for noble ideals, but the envoy annoyed her from the start. He nods along to her principles, then shoves them aside like they're useless the moment you step into the real world. He's blown away that she can think like that at such a young age. He crushes his cigarette in a flash and declares, "All right, let's talk reality." He demanded to know what's going to happen to the massive pile of money King Hall poured in. She snaps that she won't hand him the drug, and she sure as hell won't give the money back. She slams 10 million yen onto the counter, then tells him, "Take it." Yuga can't help but think how brutal drug development is. Right here, too, it costs a fortune. The gangster breaks into a tiny, sinister chuckle, like the whole situation is pure entertainment to him. He glares at Griselda, snapping that she must have lost her mind. He tears open the contract and hits the one clause nobody can ignore: mess up, and you'll have to cough up 10 times what you invested. You can watch Donatella stare in shock at the outrageous terms, like she can't believe any of this is real. Griselda's eyes widen with terror as she realizes she has to cough up 100 million yen, no excuses. She knows for sure there's no way she'll ever cough up that kind of money. She still can't believe she actually choked the moment she signed up. She laments that fate never crossed her mind. The gangster coldly snaps that her failure has nothing to do with him. He throws out a brutal choice: she can either rot in debt or claw her way out by working in his shop. He sneers like, "One day you'll pay it all back," and Griselda's face just drops in horror. He snaps at her to shut up and face the fate awaiting her. He yanks her face in his hands and demands she cough up the drug, like that's the key to fixing everything. He fires off his demand again with a chilling glare, fully sure she'll fold. Donatella grimly admits that yeah, it's awful, but once that contract is signed, it's locked in and binding. Yuga steps in and snaps at the gangster, ordering him to let the kid go. Gangster snaps into a fury, snarling, "Who does this pest think he is?" Yuga steps forward like he owns the room and declares, "I'm Shiba Yuga, a lawyer with real authority." Griselda tilts her head up and then, boom, hope ignites in her eyes like a spark catching fire. Gangster has heard of him, but the whole situation feels bizarre as hell. You could easily say it's outright unfair to make a kid pay off a debt like that. He tells Griselda she can shut down that kind of contract anytime. With a bold grin, he lays out his legal plan, proving that minors can cancel contracts anytime they choose. A text box pops up and flashes the words of Civil Code, Article 5, Section 2. Gangster freezes, momentarily struck dumb by the legal argument. Yuga frowned at the dead quiet and blurted, "What's wrong?" Gangster finds it hilarious that a lawyer would even dare to bring up a minor's age. Griselda juts out her chest like a champion and proudly declares, "I'm 17. Yuga's jaw drops when she realizes she's older than Donatella, and somehow Donatella is still acting like a kid. Gangster throws his head back and unleashes a loud, unstoppable roar of laughter. He sneers and drops the bombshell that Luano's age of majority is just 15. Yuga went totally blank, just stunned into silence by this jaw-dropping revelation. He fires back that, under Japanese law, the age of majority doesn't match theirs. He blurts out, desperate and shaking, asking if anyone at all, has the complete book of Luno law. A sickening premonition hits Griselda's face as realization crashes in. She knows exactly what's about to happen. Yuga's hand shakes as he cracks open that massive, God-given legal tome. He whips his head away, muttering through disbelief, swearing it can't possibly be true. He erupts in fury, convinced the goddess rewrote the law on purpose. Text box flashes the updated rule, Civil Code Article 4. A brand new chapter kicks off, laying out the whole idea behind a minor's right to slam a contract shut. The whole law is there to shield minors from getting preyed on by crooked adults who have no shame. But the exact age of majority is set by whatever the local laws say. God Girl grins and says she set the age to 15 so she'll fit the local customs perfectly. Griselda's stuck in a corner, hand over the drug, or face a debt so impossible it might as well be a death sentence. Gangster lets out a smug little chuckle, like the victory's already sealed. He bursts into laughter, because the idea of a lawyer being that clueless is pure comedy to him. He tells Yuga, "Yeah, I don't know the law," then hits him with the real truth, turning a 15-year-old into an adult is just common sense, okay? He sneers that Yuga is useless, just some clueless guy who doesn't even know the basic truths. The gangster's words landed like a punch. Yuga felt utterly useless, like he couldn't do anything right at all. Yuga finally realizes that Japan's laws just can't be enforced perfectly in a place like this. This world runs on kings and nobles, each one living by their own totally different rules for how society should work. In this fantasy world where elves rule the sky, their law won't bend to Japanese rules at all. He never saw it coming, someone actually rewrote the law itself. The gangster leans in and grills Yuga, asking if he's ever dared to step out into the real world at all. He tears into Yuga, calling him a spoiled brat who's never had to suffer a day in his life. Yuga clenched his fist, fury roaring because some stranger understood him like he'd seen straight through his soul. He strutted in his own mind like he owned the world, bragging about what he knew, until it all collapsed and the foundation he built got shattered. Donatella watches him with growing worry, feeling the storm of his inner battle churning beneath the surface. Memories of every past failure and humiliation in Japan crash through his mind like a wave. When the gangsters spot their edge, they grin and demand, "So are you happy now?" He roars the threat again, demanding Griselda hand over the drug right now. He yanks her face in clothes and growls that she better not make him hurt her. Donatella fixes her stare, lets the anger sharpen her face and braces herself to step in. Baron Kinjal's thug smirks and scoffs, asking if they really plan to take him on. Donatella smirks coolly and calls out his loud, empty threats like he's all talk and no bite. "Wait, what was that?" The gangster snarls and rage twists his face into something ugly. Yuga lunges in to calm Donatella down, but she shrugs it off and tells him it's no big deal. The gangster locks eyes with her, instantly sizing up whether she's got the nerve to even lift a weapon. He spits out "brat," but when her confidence doesn't budge, he freezes mid-step. A tight close-up catches Donatella's razor-sharp, self-assured grin, like she already knows how everything ends. The thug's swagger crumbles, and one cold bead of sweat betrays his shaky confidence. Donatella leans in and asks what's wrong, clocking that he's completely lost his nerve. He snaps back in full rage, swearing that if he ever attacked he'd have the guards called on him. Donatella's smile vanished into a hard stare, then she confessed that her taunt was just a cheap trick. Her eyes narrow to a laser point as she declares, without a drop of violence, only the law stands. She points at Yuga and declares, loud and certain, that nobody on Earth can beat him in a courtroom fight. She demands his confirmation, and a totally flustered Yuga blurts out a shaky, nervous laugh. The gangster sneers with icy confidence, like the idea that he can't handle someone else is totally ridiculous. He dares Yuga to fire up his law and use it on King Hall's ironclad, legit contract. He tells the lawyer get ready, because the moment he says no, everything that follows is going to hit hard. With a sharp flick of his hand, he dares Yuga to go on, try it. He heckles Yuga for doing nothing, then presses him. Are you really too incapable to move, or is this just pure refusal? Yuga is locked in ice-cold fear, desperate to rush to Griselda's side but powerless to do a single thing. He feels for her, the poor girl shackled by one brutal, cursed contract. But he knows he can't let that dangerous drug get anywhere near her. Despair crashes over him as he realizes the law has been rewritten, and there's literally nowhere left to go. He's completely helpless, just a lost stranger in a world where the common sense he's never learned will get him killed. Griselda stands there with a grim stare, because her situation feels completely hopeless. All at once, the realization hits Yuga like a burst of light across his face. Donatella hooks a hand on his shoulder, and you can feel the shift in him the moment it happens. The gangster's patience snapped. This deadlock was getting so dull that he blurted out, "This is turning tedious." Griselda's eyes go wide as he proudly declares, "I'm just heading home." He slams to a stop at the door and drops his final warning, one last word before everything changes. With a sinister grin, he leans in and warns her, "Fires are waiting tonight, so be careful." Griselda gasped in pure terror, finally realizing he was threatening to burn everything down. He tosses her a lazy goodbye, and just like that she's left frozen behind her desk. She begs him to stop, but her voice gets swallowed by pure terror. A voice off-panel yells at her, demanding to know about the drug, but the people asking aren't the gangsters. Donatella grins, pulling off the con and locking the gangster in place. Mission complete. Yuga cuts in, snapping that the drug won't be needed. He flashes a smug grin, now bursting with confidence, and declares he can cancel the contract anytime. The gangster snaps his head around, a storm of confusion and suspicion flashing across his face. He leans in, demanding to know what in the world Yuga thinks he's talking about. Yuka raises two fingers and declares, "I've got two questions for you." Griselda just stares on, itching to know what else is left to say at this point. Yuga leans in and jolts the gangster with a line he said the moment they first showed up. Griselda scrambles to remember what she said, sure she dropped something important. A flashback bursts open, showing her grumbling about how agonizingly long it's been since she last heard a thing. Yuga leans in, pressing her hard, and demands to know the last time she ever talked to King Hall's people. She demands to know what any of that even means, but he won't back down, he's pushing for a real answer. She snaps about his non-stop questions, then braces herself to answer anyway. She tells him she hasn't heard a peep since the very day she signed. Yuga smirks just a little. "All right," he murmurs, knowing his trap is already sprung. Gangster snaps, losing patience fast, and tells him to quit dragging his feet and stop wasting time. Yuga tells them that their conversation hit him as something just wasn't right. The gangster insisted Griselda sign that contract because she was clueless, not because she understood a thing. Donatella is absolutely stunned when she finds out King Hall is secretly supplying the princess. The gangster doubles down on his earlier claim and Yuga just stands there like, "Of course I remember," and you can tell it really stuns him. An unseen voice cuts in, demanding, "So tell me, are there really no strange things about this?" Yuga insists Griselda can't possibly be unaware of King Home. The gangster nods and says it straight, there's only one possible answer. Back when the contract kicked in, Griselda was still just a clueless student, completely unaware of what was coming. Yuga whips around to Griselda, and when she nods, she confirms it's all true. She suddenly remembers her own wild boast, yeah, the one where she bragged she'd graduated from that university at just 14. Yuga blurts out, "I said the same thing a few seconds ago, did I?" In a flashback, she stands tall and brags with pure confidence about her unbeatable academic skills. Donatella's slip was the one wrong move, and then, boom, the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Yuga's eyes blaze with victory, he blurts it out like he's nailed the win. He straight up declares Griselda is 14, still a minor under Luano's law. The gangster and Griselda freeze on the spot, their mouths hanging open in shock at this explosive revelation. She was still underage when she put her name on a legally binding contract. Donatella stares on and it hits her all at once, her face crumples into shocked realization. The gangster scoffs through his teeth, acting like he already knew that fact all along. He insists that since she's 17 now, whatever label she had before doesn't matter anymore. Yuga lays it out since he's a minor when he signs, he can pull the plug and cancel the deal. He thunders his argument with the law itself, then drops the real bomb, that right to rescind dies after 5 long years. The gangster is completely rocked, his legal argument gets obliterated. Yuga yells that the right to cancel the contract is still alive and kicking. He whips around to Griselda and barks that she needs to wipe out the agreement right now. The gangster sputters out a hard laugh, calling the whole idea pure nonsense. He glares at Griselda, trying to scare the words right out of her mouth. Yugo snaps that he better not mess with her legal right to cancel. Griselda slams the cash into his hands and screams that she's canceling the contract. Yuga snaps back and declares it. Once her rescission hits, that contract is dead, null, and void. The gangster stomps forward in a rage, his boots crashing hard against the floor. He roars that he won't swallow this ending, because what just happened is outrageous. Yuga keeps his cool and snaps that this is straight-up karmic justice for trying to exploit a child. The gangster swears he'll take revenge on King Hall and threatens to drag them into court. Yuga stands tall and proudly declares, "I'll be Griselda's representative." The gangsters snap with rage, realizing he's been trapped. Yuga has King Hall's crooked business plan clocked, and he's sure it can't survive a single second of public scrutiny. If Griselda's case goes down, King Hall's other investments are getting wiped out too. Thinking about King Hall crumbling to ruin makes that grim satisfaction hit hard. The gangster goes death quiet, crushed at last, and Griselda calmly accepts his surrender. He lets out a heavy sigh and admits if that's the law, then he's got no choice at all. But he snaps, "This is my job, so I'm finishing it no matter what." His eyes flash with pure malice as he swears he'll slaughter them, then snatch the drug for himself. He swings his blade into view, and the crowd freezes, utterly stunned. Yuga stares in total disbelief, blurting, "What are you even talking about?" The gangster steps in again, looming closer with pure deadly intent in his eyes. Griselda stared at him, her face turning deathly pale with pure shaking terror. She clamps her eyes shut, and the moment it hits, a terrified gasp rips out of her. He hoists the knife over his head and howls at her to die. Yuga erupts in an alarmed shout, and pure panic takes over his face. He rages at Griselda, calling her a liar and demands she sprint for her life right now. Donatella snaps into action and a glowing magical circle slams into the gangster's path, stopping his blade cold. The gangster whips around in pure shock, his attack getting crushed because her overwhelming power just stops him cold. A blinding blast erupts from where it hits, and the magic crackles like lightning across the air. He's totally dumbfounded by this sudden, crushing wave of power. Donatella smirks coolly, then takes a breath and gears up to unleash her spell at full power. A monstrous explosion tears through the storefront, blasting the whole building apart in one violent, roaring hit. Yuga mumbles, still in shock, staring at the wreckage like his mind can't even wrap around it. Across the street, the gangster is slammed to the wall, then magical vines spear through him like living spears. Yuga snaps at Donatella that she crossed the line, then Donatella swears up and down, "I didn't kill him." He finally clocks it, she planned this from the jump, aiming to shut the whole fight down fast. He gets exactly why she did it, she didn't just fight his violence back, she turned her own strength into a counter-strike. Donatella flashes a cheeky grin and asks, "So, does this count as an act of necessity?" Yuga wryly shuts her down on the spot, saying that what happened would count as self-defense. When the guards finally show up, Yuga throws his hands in the air, exhausted and defeated. Griselda mused that she'd always seen the law as a dirty little trade meant for commoners. She erupted into laughter, then admitted she'd been a complete fool for missing just how vulnerable she really was. You'll be shocked because he might not be the total failure that gangster swore he was. Donatella stares at him, eyes shining, convinced he's the one God picked for greatness. He knows his total lack of common sense is a deadly weakness in this world. So he steels himself to study, adapt, and climb, because he can feel himself getting better as a lawyer. Griselda flashes him a grateful smile and offers to build anything he wants, right there, as payment for his help. Yuga can't shake the feeling that her generosity is suspicious, and that her whole attitude change is too sudden to trust. Donatella clocks that with Griselda backing him up, he'll be okay so long as he doesn't get drunk again. Yuga makes it crystal clear, Griselda has to properly thank Donatella for saving her. Griselda puffs out her cheeks, mortified by the harsh lecture he just laid on her. He tells her that Donatella saved her life, so she better thank her the right way. Griselda snapped that an adult should have known better than to act like that. She knows she has to snap out of it and act her age, not throw a tantrum like some pouting kid. Embarrassment and raw frustration surged up, filling her eyes with tears. Flustered to the bone, she blurts out a shaky, heartfelt thank you. She beams and asks what's so good about it, and Donatella just grins, "You're cute." At night, a towering, shadowy mansion looms under the glittering stars. Inside, a maid keeps vigil over her master's still form as a brand new chapter kicks off. The maid can't believe it. How did everything go so horribly wrong? Her flawless plan collapsed in an instant, because one tiny, unforeseen mistake came out of nowhere and wrecked everything. Griselda practically bursts with excitement and tells Yuga he has to help her test out her brand new products. You guys are absolutely terrified at the idea of becoming her own personal guinea pig. Griselda snaps that chores are off the table now that they're living with her, she's got no time for any of it. She leans in and drops the bombshell, she's got a surplus sleeping draft left over from a fresh commission. She couldn't help thinking, maybe this potion wasn't just for one thing, maybe it could be used for something else entirely. She rips into Yuga, insisting he pop sleeping pills to knock out his insomnia. That snapped the idea in her mind, weaponize the sleeping draft and use it to defend herself. She keeps it simple, a needle dipped in the drug shoots out and lands on the target. She slipped the device into everyday stuff, so she'd be ready to snap into action the instant an emergency hit. She proudly shows off her pocket watch, style sleeping draft injector. Yuga asks, "Can you make my tie work with a voice recorder?" Griselda lets out a sharp scoff at his plan and tells him straight up to use some common sense. He clocks her plan, she's trying the device on him, and he shuts it down cold with a hard, flat refusal. The little shop bell jingles the moment the maid steps inside, and Yuga jumps, completely caught off guard. The maid leans in and says she's here to settle up for that recent service. Griselda leans in and tells her to follow every instruction she just laid out. The maid hands her the payment, and Griselda gives the woman a nod as they both thank her for the job. Griselda wastes no time, now that the customer's gone, she dives right back into her experiment. In a flashback, Griselda screams, "Mart the thief has escaped." Griselda snaps her focus back on the completely rattled Donatella. She tries to calm Donatella down, but the elf makes it crystal clear, she's not about to be anyone's test subject. Later, Yuga and Donatella stroll through the calm, quiet city streets, like the whole world pauses for them. Donatella perks up and suggests they take a trip, because with all this free time they can't just sit around. Yuga still remembers, before they ever met, Donatella was a full-on wanderer. She pitches a string of horrifying destinations, and Yuga's not just bothered, he's downright terrified. Yuga nods and says a vacation sounds perfect, if it's safe. Right when they think they're about to pull it off, the royal guard crashes in, and Liliana is at the center of it. Liliana snaps that she wasted half the day tearing through the place just to find them. She grumbles that running after them is nowhere on her official job list. Yuga smirks and demands what she wants, and the moment those words hit, her purpose snaps back into focus. Liliana speaks in a grave voice and tells him the order is clear, he has to defend this brand new client. New defendant sits under one terrifying allegation: murder. She drops the bombshell, the defendant's name is Laurentia Postlethwaite. A stunning dark-haired maid sits stone still behind the prison fence, her silence hanging in the air like a warning. Her sad eyes lift to him as she whispers, "Who are you?" Blushing hard at how striking she is, Yuga stammers and introduces himself, right as her lawyer. She snapped, "Get out," and the shock slammed him so hard he couldn't even speak. He demanded to know if he'd offended her, but she snapped back that it had nothing to do with him. She insists she can't possibly burden a legendary lawyer with something so small and ordinary. Yuga grabs her attention and tells her straight up that she's wrong, she can't keep talking about herself like that. He stands up and declares, "I'm your lawyer," then vows to fight for her with every ounce of strength he's got. He insists it doesn't matter who she is, he's showing up just to help her. Horizon Widen let his burning promise of support ring out, and it hit the room like pure fire. He leans in and demands she tell him everything, and she starts her story without wasting a second. She served as a maid for the lust-chasing Baron Bapu Orakang. The whole incident erupted at the Baron's grand, towering mansion, the kind that loomed like it owned the night. 3 nights back she was dragged, summoned, straight to the master's private bedroom. Right there they found her with the Baron, his chest split open, knife still buried inside him. Yuga leans in and asks her straight up if she's got any clue who the real killer might be. Laurentia clenched her fists in her lap, and her voice shook with raw emotion. She blurts out the truth: she was the one who killed the master. Yuga, Donatella, and Liliana are stunned when her sudden confession drops like a bomb. Yuga confirms it: she slipped a knife into Baron Orikok and ended him from right inside the room. He leaned in and asked her, voice soft but sharp, why she'd do something this awful. She says he didn't just ask, he ordered her to crawl into his bed and serve him. The moment the idea hit her, it felt unbearable. Then she swung the blade and stabbed him before she even realized what she'd done. She drops her apology, but Yuga waves it off and tells her she doesn't owe him a thing. Liliana leans in and shows Laurentia real sympathy for the mess she's stuck in. Liliana leans in and tells Laurentia the truth: she's a lake maiden, chained to a curse that won't let her go. The curse seals the fate of anyone who dares steal her purity; they're doomed to die. Once the curse snaps into place, she's trapped in that mansion for the rest of her life. Yuga is left utterly speechless, trapped in a fate she can't outrun, and it's pure nightmare. He glares through the fence, snapping that her situation is just plain cruel. Yuga insists that if the king really gets the reasons, then a lighter sentence could still be on the table. The law screams one thing: murder doesn't get a free pass, it earns you death, life in prison, or at least 5 years behind bars. He spins away from the prison cell, already convinced the punishment won't hit that hard. Liliana cuts Yuga off mid-dream, snapping that he needs to stop getting carried away with wishful thinking. She snaps him back to reality: a commoner is the one who just murdered a nobleman. A blazing mansion looms in a haunting vision, flashing the old law's brutal punishments like a warning you can't ignore. Liliana flat out tells the king that if he acts unsure in front of the other nobles, he'll lose all power. Agilatine towers over Laurentia, and you can almost feel the harsh verdict coming. Yuga stammered in disbelief, stunned by the cold, brutal political truth of everything. He stands there in stunned silence, letting her words land like a crushing weight on his chest. Liliana snaps that if they dangle false hope for Laurentia right now, it's not kindness, it's cruelty. Yuga clenched his fist and swore he'd hunt down proof strong enough to convince the king. He's flat out declaring Laurentia isn't the one at fault, and he's not about to let this slide or happen again. Standing guard in front of Laurentia, he vows loud and fearless that he'll save her no matter what. A rattling, horse-drawn carriage barrels down the road, hauling them straight to the crime scene. Inside, Yuga sinks into deep thought while Donatella stares out the window, lost in whatever she's watching. Donatella whirls toward him and demands to know if he's got a plan brewing. She can't believe it: how on earth is he supposed to protect Laurentia after that massive declaration? Eyes shut tight, Yuga finally admits it: he still doesn't have a real game plan. Lorenzia's confession keeps replaying in his head, and now his self-defense story suddenly sounds impossible. He has no choice but to fight for a miracle, trading his death sentence for just 5 brutal years. He declares, full of resolve, that he has to find some reason, any reason, that makes killing the nobleman feel unavoidable. He's locked in on one thing: that crucial evidence has to be at the crime scene. The young guard snaps a salute and blurts, "You're Lord Shiba Yudi, right?" Yuga blurts out who he is, but his gut churns. He can't help wondering if the military is still hunting answers. Guards can't stop gossiping about the god-chosen lawyer and that weird thing he does with his neck time. The lead guard leans in and says Liliana already briefed them, then hypes them to come inside. With a thunderous swing, those heavy doors burst open, and a voice from inside greets them like it's been waiting. A maid strides in and introduces herself: Eunice Pettinger, the powerhouse in charge of the Orikok household staff. She'll lead them straight through the mansion, and it blows Yuga's mind. Yuga clocks her from Greiselda's shop, then leans in, wondering if she actually remembers him. Eunice offers a polite smile and waves them in, like she already knows exactly what's about to happen. She marches them straight into the master's bedroom, still trapped inside the preserved crime scene. She wraps up her room introduction and stands right next to a Yuga who can't even move, frozen in pure shock. Yuga leans in and asks, "Mind if I ask you something about the crime scene?" He demands to know who first stumbled onto the body, and Eunice shoots back that it was her. He demands a full breakdown of that night, no Laurentia anywhere near it. Eunice nods and kicks off her tale, starting with the crazy events from the night before last. In a wild flashback, she remembers escorting a silent, solemn Laurentia straight to the master's room. She stood outside for a whole hour, then when no call ever came, she snapped and went to check. Her face hardens the moment the horrific scene she stumbled upon comes rushing back. She stumbled upon the Baron's body dead on the spot, a knife buried in his chest, and Laurentia was there too, frozen in sheer horror beside him. She blurted out the news right away and sent the other servants rushing into action. She finishes her testimony and declares that's how it all happened. Donatella murmurs that Laurentia's guilt feels impossible to deny. Donatella leans in and asks Eunice if she can fire off a question, and Eunice simply nods, giving her the green light. Donatella cut straight to the point and demanded to know why Laurentia had been summoned to the bedroom. Eunice shoots back one icy line, firm as a command for night service. She tells him it was the master's sick little tradition to summon servants straight to his bed. Donatella blurted, stunned, "Wait, did Laurentia mention this deal too?" Eunice snapped into fake shock and asked, "Wait, don't you already know this?" Donatella recoils in disgust, while Eunice stays stone still, showing not a single emotion. Donatella snaps her rage at Yuga, demanding to know why human men are so filthy in the first place. Eunice speaks in a calm voice and says some servants may grumble about the duty, but everyone's expected to do it. Her eyes turn cold as she snaps, "You don't get to kill your own master just because you think it's justified." Yuga drops her gaze, groaning as she grudgingly admits she might actually be right. Donatella's face is a raging mask, and one deadly word hangs in the air then. She spins around like a blade in the dark, insisting she'll never, ever forgive the Baron. While they bicker, Yuga just snaps out of it, ignores everyone, and starts yanking the bedsheets like he's trying to tear himself free. Donatella clocks him as he starts asking what he's doing. She blurts his name, desperate for his attention, while he stays locked on the sheet. He finally lifts his eyes and blurts, "I wasn't listening," and the instant those words hit, her annoyance spikes. His eyes lock onto something he just uncovered on the bed. He looms at the bed, and a dark blood stain stains the mattress right in front of him. Ask the guard straight up if this evidence is actually going to be used in the trial. The guard snaps that only the stuff the captain marked is getting seized. Yuga snapped, grabbed the sheet, and warned them this will never fly in Japan. Realization hits his face the second he spots the opening. Donatella whips around to face him and demands, "What's wrong with you?" He tells her, calm as steel, that he's got this, and it throws her completely off guard. He boldly declares he might finally prove Laurentia's innocence after all. A flashback slams into Lawrence's mind. He's back to the day a human trafficker sold him like property. Her new master was brutal, and every time she stumbled, tears streamed down her face like she couldn't breathe. But Eunice always showed up with kindness, handing her a special uniform and telling her, "Don't cry," like it was a promise. The head maid wiped away her tears, then pulled her close in a warm, comforting hug. Laurentia confesses that Eunice, in that uniform, lit up her biggest dream. Back in the present, Donatella's nerves spike as she realizes the trial is about to kick off. She and Laurentia keep their eyes glued on Yuga, praying he's got a real plan cooking. Yuga strides straight past them, lost in his own head, and Donatella snaps, calling him out. He blurts out an apology for zoning out, and Laurentia softly calls his name like it's the only thing that matters. She looks at this weirdly dressed man and demands what he's trying to protect her from. Flash of her blood-stained hands slams into his mind. Laurentia's voice booms through the halls as she straight up kills the Baron with her bare hands. Yuga stands with his back to her, frozen as her confession hits him and his thoughts start racing. Donatella asks if he's okay, and he flashes a confident grin like his plan is already locked in. Right before the trial starts, he leans into Laurentia and drops the bomb, "There's just one last thing." Laurentia shut him down cold, telling him she had zero need for any lawyer. He stares at her, totally baffled that she just yanks her refusal out of nowhere. She swears she killed someone, and she's not even thinking about running. She's ready to take whatever punishment comes for her, even if it means the death penalty. Yuga stands there listening like a calm storm, eyes focused and expression sharp with thought. He straight up admits that if you make a move, you better own what happens next. But he throws down his pride and vows he'll never let her take the fall for a crime she didn't commit. He tells her to drop everything and lock in on the trial right now. Laurentia drops her gaze and her face folds into pure sorrow, like she's already made peace with what's coming. Yuga's freaking out that people might think he's just some creepy old man. Donatella murmurs Laurentia's name under her breath, and worry tightens her face. She leaned in and asked Laurentia, "So your birthday isn't just around the corner, is it?" Laurentia blurts out that today's her 15th birthday, and Donatella wastes no time throwing her heartfelt congratulations. You storm over here and tell Laurentia, "Don't worry, everything's gonna be okay from now on." Yuga stands unshaken and declares, "I've got every last material I need for court." Surrounded by his allies, he strides ahead with a cocky grin, swearing he'll crush this trial. The courtroom gallery buzzes with every kind of person, humans packed shoulder to shoulder with all sorts of fantasy races. The king's ornate crown sits tall, a heavy, gleaming badge that screams his absolute control over every word of the proceedings. King Marius scans the chamber, and once he spots every key player is finally in place, he gives the room a sharp, approving look. From his throne, the king's voice rips through the hall as he officially slams the gavel, declaring the court is open and the session begins. Prosecutor Joan Wyson flashes a cool, confident smile, then gestures sharply like she's cueing the prosecution to strike first and start the case. From her seat in the gallery, Laurentia stares down in heartbreak, the trial's weight crushing her like a storm. Joan recounts the murder in sharp detail, making it crystal clear that killing a nobleman like Baron Orikok isn't just violence, it's a crushing responsibility that weighs like a curse. His eyes harden with conviction as he braces himself to fire off his final, damning demand. Joan demands the death penalty, and Laurentia's face crumples as horror hits her like a punch. Then the prosecutor slams his fist down and announces, "I'm calling a witness next." He whips around to Yuga, praying those loud earlier boasts were nothing but empty talk. Yuga's face set like stone as he snaps out a clear command, "Bring in the witness." Laurentia sharply gasps, stunned as she recognizes the person stepping into the court. Headmaid Eunice sweeps in, her glowing spectacles hiding whatever she's truly feeling. Laurentia leans in and whispers the headmaid's name, and her voice shakes with heartbreak and total confusion. The witness gets formally named as Eunice Piedinger, the Orikok estate's headmaid. From the witness stand, Eunice snaps her attention to the heartbroken young woman and calls her by her first name. She chokes back her heartbreak, stunned that it's come to this, and she still has more to say. She flashes a warm, kind smile and swears they'll team up again once Laurentia finally atones for her crime. Choked with emotion, Laurentia breaks into tears and cries out the headmaid's name, overflowing with gratitude. She just shatters, full-on sobbing, begging forgiveness for crimes she's convinced are all her fault. Yuga just stands there calm as ever and tells her, quietly but firmly, that it's still way too early for apologies. Annoyed, Joan brushes off the whole emotional outburst and shoves the witness to keep talking, straight back to her testimony. Eunice steps up and swears that Laurentia was commanded to stay by the Baron all night long. The gallery erupts in stunned whispers as she uncovers the victim's disgusting secret with his maids. Around 9 o'clock, she tells how she set the room up and personally guided Laurentia to the Baron. After 2 long hours, she finally tracked down the scene and declared that Laurentia was the killer. Yuga kicks off his argument, admitting his client deserves forgiveness, but insisting it's only the start of the bigger truth. Eunice snaps the truth to the stunned court. Laurentia is no ordinary maiden, she's cursed by the lake itself. She whips around to the king and begs, not for forgiveness, but for a merciful, lenient sentence. The gallery can't decide what to feel, some hearts ache for her suffering, while others can't ignore how brutal her crime really is. In the defendant's box, Laurentia sits stone still, her face etched with crushing, silent sorrow. King Marius, jaw set like stone, orders the lawyer to fire up his counterargument. Princess Vivian watches, smiling like she already knows the defendant's guilt is an airtight, undeniable truth. Laurentia's last shred of hope is a desperate, trembling plea for mercy, begging for a lighter punishment. Every gaze is locked on the undefeated lawyer, perfect record, 0 losses and pure dominance. The princess can't help but wonder what kind of show this legendary lawyer is about to bring to the stage next. The king sits at the throne and runs the court, his stare pressing down like pure royal power. On the witness stand, headmaid Eunice just sits there with a stone-calm, unreadable face that gives nothing away. Prosecutor Joan Wyson just smirks with smug confidence, acting like victory is already snatched and in his hands. Yuga steps up, shoulders squared, and speaks up clear as day, ready to lay out his argument. He drops a jaw-crushing claim in court: his client didn't kill the victim. Donatella stared in total disbelief, and a bead of sweat slid down her temple. Even Princess Vivienne's calm shatters, her eyes go wide with real, shocked disbelief. The whole courtroom goes dead silent, stunned, confused, and staring like they just got hit with a thunderclap. The prosecutor scoffs, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow, completely stunned by what he's hearing. He erupted into laughter, brushing off the claim as pure nonsense, straight up ridiculous. Yoga slashes in right past him, eyes locked on the witness, and demands he let him question them. Headmaid nods with a calm smile, then opens the door and tells him to ask whatever he wants. Yoga kicks off the cross-examination, and her testimony sounds reasonable at first, then it hits him with contradictions. He calls her out right there, his razor-sharp stare slashing through the lie she's been hiding behind. Her eyes squeeze into a sharp glare, annoyance blazing, yet she insists she just left out a bunch of details. She bats her innocent eyes and begs for forgiveness, claiming she's clueless about how the court works. But Yoga doesn't slow down, he's gearing up to fire off his next must-know question. He locks in the crucial detail and she lets out a quick truth: Laurentia is hitting her coming of age today. Eunice finally admits she was, of course, fully aware it was her colleague's birthday. Yoga leaned in and demanded she confirm the Baron's disgusting habit of picking on the maids. He hits the big contradiction: so tell me, why did they push this night's service up? Donatella snaps into it out of nowhere, eyes widening as the timeline finally clicks into place. Laurentia hit her coming-of-age moment today, 3 days after that shocking incident rocked her world. She can't stop wondering how Yuga clocked that detail, like he's been in the know the whole time. The head maid is thrown into a panic, and her flawless composure finally starts to shatter. She keeps insisting every week like clockwork that she's only doing what her master ordered, even though it reeks of pure whim. Yoga smirks because it's just way too convenient, getting killed on a whim like that. Prosecutor Jones snaps for an opinion, but Yoga coolly shrugs it off and moves forward. Yoga plays the scene back in his head, snapping questions into the mystery: why the hell was a knife used? Donatella, totally thrown off by his logic, gets hit with the blunt truth: the whole situation feels wrong and out of place. His thoughts snap to one glaring problem: the knife sitting there daring him. A soft hiss slips out of Donatella's mouth as the terrifying truth finally clicks in. Yoga digs in and figures out why the defendant never brought the weapon into that room. So that knife had to be there already, someone planted it before this even happened. The gallery buzzes with whispers, everyone now scrambling to figure out who dared leave that weapon there. Yoga snaps his accusation straight at the headmate sitting on the witness stand. From high above, Princess Vivian watches it all unfold, her silent frustration simmering like a storm. Prosecutor Jones stands there, mouth open, totally rattled, because that lawyer just dropped a jaw-smashing claim. Headmaid Eunice turns to Yoga and still, somehow, his composure is unnervingly intact. She calmly points out that Yoga's theory is missing one crucial person. She claims the victim himself hauled the knife into the room to use it for self-defense. King nods and says it's totally normal for a former soldier to still carry a weapon. Unruffled, Eunice keeps her calm, steady face, pure confidence, like she's fully in control. She flashes a confident smile and dares him to tell her anything else he thinks she left out. Her stance hits the lawyer from another world like a silent dare. She's so confident it's scary. She claims the killer's identity is already staring everyone in the face right there in court. In the defendant's box, Laurentia drops her gaze in pure despair, and her hope dies out completely. Yuka's eyes stay razor-sharp, locked on the goal. She won't let this setback shake her for a second. He stays totally calm, then tells them, "I've got one last point, and that's what ends this." Eunice nods politely and agrees to let him ask his final question, wearing total confidence like armor. Yuka kicks things off by repeating one plain truth straight from the maid's own testimony. She demands his side of the story, and he snaps back that she's clutching a crucial detail back from him. Eunice fires off a challenge, daring him to guess the hidden truth, while she pretends she has absolutely no clue. Yoga drops the crucial detail. Laurentia shows up, and the victim is already sound asleep. He jabs the head button for confirmation, grilling them straight: "Tell me I'm wrong." She demanded to know if the defendant told him, but he swears that if he hadn't, it would have been something else entirely. He insists a slender girl can't possibly take down a soldier unless the soldier slips first. The gallery leaned in, straight up nodding along to his razor-sharp argument, because his logic felt completely bulletproof. He plants the big question: why would the Baron doze off for his own rendezvous? Yoga storms up to the witness and demands answers, because that glaring inconsistency is impossible to ignore. Headmaid Eunice calmly shuts down the accusation, her eyes sealed tight like they're guarding secrets no one's supposed to find. In the courtroom, Eunice leaned in and told Yoga, "You've got to be exhausted by now. Yuga couldn't shake the feeling that something about her perfect story was terribly off. He leaned in and demanded she tell him, what was she hiding from him that screamed suspicious loud enough to shake the room. He leaned in and said the real reason was simple: the victim wasn't asleep by accident. Baron Orikok was out cold, knocked flat by a brutal sleeping draft that left him sinking into oblivion. Eunice let out a tiny gasp, so small it was almost invisible, right as her composure finally snapped. Griselda's booming voice ripped through the room, and Yuga slammed his surprise witness onto the stand. The genius inventor smashed through the courtroom doors, demanding answers about what the hell was happening. Yuga jabbed a finger at the witness stand and demanded she tell him whether she'd sold drugs to Eunice. Griselda didn't hesitate for a second. She confirmed, stone cold, that she sold a sleeping potion to that woman. She couldn't believe it. She said it was a tragedy, especially since she'd warned her over and over about the dosage. Yuga watched her like a hawk, his plan rolling out flawlessly while Griselda stared on, utterly lost. Princess Vivienne, perched in her box, leaned forward and demanded to know whether the witness had drugged the victim. Yuga stepped up in front of the king and the whole court and swore, word for word, that this was exactly what had happened. Eunice swore it was her sacred duty to help her master, who couldn't sleep and tossed in agony through the night. Unmoved, Yuga snapped at a guard to haul in the last piece of evidence. Prosecutor Jones stared at it, brow furrowed in pure confusion, like he couldn't wrap his head around what he was seeing. The guard came back hauling a huge white bedsheet, stretched tight except for one ugly dark stain. Yuga reached for the cloth covering the victim, then Laurentia drove the knife into him. From his towering throne, the king stared down and demanded to know what the whole thing was even supposed to be for. Yuga leaned in and practically shoved him to look closer, pointing out that tiny bloodstain so impossibly small it didn't make sense. The king admitted that a deep knife wound should have gushed with way more blood. He clocked the stab wound instantly and still, barely a drop of blood showed up. Princess Vivienne leaned in and fired the real question: could something like that even exist in the first place? Yuga's eyes snapped wide open, her question slammed his whole theory into perfect place. Yeah, he snapped back, it's only possible once the victim's blood stops running. Princess leaned in, eyes razor-sharp, and she clocked the real meaning in an instant. She dropped her fan, stunned as she realized the incredible truth he was about to lay bare. Yuga snapped that this one shred of evidence nailed a truth so obvious it couldn't be denied. Right when Laurentius drove the knife into him, Baron Orikak was already dead. Laurentia gasped as the truth slammed into her: she wasn't a murderer. The courtroom exploded when Yuga snapped that the victim was already dead long before the blade ever struck. The gallery buzzed with whispers, desperate to know what that shocking truth could mean for Laurentia's fate. Yuga slapped the law on the table. This wasn't murder, it was corpse desecration, a crime with a much smaller bite. Laurentia lifted her gaze, and a spark of hope finally flickered back to life in her eyes. So he said, with zero bad intent, that Laurentia hadn't committed any crime at all. Donatella stared at him, jaw slack, a bead of sweat sliding down her temple as his logic blew her mind. Peeking behind her fan, Princess Vivienne leaned in, watching the chaos unfold with sharp, hungry interest. Prosecutor Jones stood there, drenched in sweat and utterly speechless, because his whole case had collapsed into ruins. Yuga snapped that this wasn't a fluke, someone had planned the whole thing down to the last detail. This person cooked up a wild, intricate scheme just to bury an inconvenient truth. His eyes sharpened the moment he snapped his focus back to the witness stand. Eunice Peedinger, the killer, declared, with his voice slicing through the room like a verdict. He told me she wanted her master dead, but she couldn't bring herself to risk the death penalty. So she cooked up a vicious scheme: she'd make innocent Laurentia do the killing for her. She knew Laurentia, the lake's maiden, would slam the door on the Baron's advances. She drugged him, slid a knife beside his bed, then sent the girl away so they could pin the blame on her. Yuga shot up a finger and said, "There's one problem with your whole plan." Griselda straight up told him it all came down to the dosage. This Baron needed a potion far stronger than the one they had. So Eunice had to test the drug and figure out the exact dose that would knock them into a deep sleep. Her deadly blunder was realizing the Baron would die right here, during the test itself. That huge dose of potion mixed with alcohol turned into a deadly combo. In a full-blown panic, Eunice suddenly realized, now they're going to blame her for murder. Right then and there she got no choice, she had to rip up her plan and switch it on the fly. She set up the crime scene around the victim who was already lifeless. She made it look like Laurentia had killed him, timed to perfection for that very night. Donatella finally cracked the mystery of that incident right before Laurentia hit her coming of age. Yuga wrapped up the reconstruction, eyes locked on the witness that finally went silent. He thrust a finger forward, his voice shaking the room. "The killer is you." Prosecutor Joan was stunned, calling the accusation a total joke that could never be true. He brushed Yuga's whole theory aside like it was pure, baseless guesswork. He demanded that Eunice shut down the wild, outrageous accusations thrown her way. Yuga calmly said he could rip that simple denial apart with zero effort. He leaned in and told Eunice, "I've got one final question, one that's been haunting me since the very beginning. Why would the witness risk everything with that messy, high-stakes plan?" He even nodded along, saying the perfect crime is getting someone else to do the killing for you. Everything in the story teetered on one thing: if the scapegoat wasn't a maiden of the lake, the whole plan would crumble. She'd been waiting forever for the one perfect person to finally show up at the mansion. Could she really have endured all those years, slaving away for the very man she despised so deeply? She was determined to dodge the death penalty and somehow claw her way out of that mansion's iron grip. That witness's unshakable grit was the one thing that haunted him the most. But if you lock in that one key fact, everything suddenly clicks into place. He locked eyes with Eunice, ready to land the final, crushing blow on her testimony. Prosecutor Joan could only stare in stunned silence, utterly lost in Yuga's wild logic. Yuga revealed isn't just a witness, he's also the lake's maiden. He told her the truth: she never left that mansion, not because she wanted to, but because she literally couldn't. And he snapped, why on earth would she shove another girl into the same brutal nightmare? He demanded to know if this one move would finally wipe the slate clean and erase all that deep, long-brewing resentment she'd carried for years. Rage burned in Joan's eyes as she snapped at Yuga to shut down his baseless, insulting accusations. But Eunice cut him off mid-sentence, whispering that he didn't know a single thing. The prosecutor stared at her, utterly thrown off by how fast her whole vibe turned cold and chilling. A brutal flashback ripped open. Eunice was chained up, assaulted, and dragged around like some sick spectacle. She said she'd been shaped her entire life to serve someone's hunger. Her voice cracked into a full-blown scream, demanding to know why she wasn't allowed to be the one who gets to choose and use others. From her seat in Laurentia, she blurted out in tears, screaming that this truth was cruel and twisted. She swore Eunice treated her with kindness, then insisted, through clenched words, that she wasn't the type to act like that. Eunice smirked like a blade and snapped at the girl, asking if she'd been ignoring her story. She confessed she'd been waiting for the one person strong enough to kill the Baron, on her behalf. She decided from the very beginning to stake everything on Laurentia, because once she earned her trust, it would never waver. Laurentia's heart shattered, one tear slipped down her cheek like it couldn't hold back anymore. Go watch the heartbreaking moment crash in, his face set in grim misery, like the weight of it is crushing him. The gallery went pale at the confession, then tore Eunice apart as a truly terrible woman. Lorenzia sat there, utterly defeated, his soul crushed by the brutal truth of the betrayal. But she snapped her voice back into place and swore it wasn't true. Eunice stared at her, stunned that she wouldn't back down for a single second. Laurentia swore she'd always felt Eunice had a good heart, even deep down. She still remembered how Eunice would lean in, smile sweetly, and comfort her every time she failed. But no matter how she smiled, that kind of deep, crushing sadness always showed through. She finally got it: this trial wasn't about Eunice watching someone else at all, it was her, staring right back at herself. Laurentia felt it, like a stranger swooped in and claimed her as their own. In that solemn courtroom, Laurentia steps forward and pours out her final, heartfelt words. Tears pour down her cheeks as she whispers to Eunice that she truly is a kind person. Behind her spectacles, Eunice's eyes drink in every emotion on screen, flickering with something complicated and intense. She swivels away, brushing off the young maid's feelings as nothing but foolish talk. With a heavy, knowing smile, she sighs and declares Laurentia is nothing but a truly foolish girl. King Marius snaps his eyes shut, taking in every single claim that got thrown around in that trial. Prosecutor Joan Weiss steps up and admits the moment is here. Every last argument has already been thrown on the table. The king rises to his feet, ready to slam down the court's final, unanimous verdict. He announces, loud and clear, that the court has ruled Laurentia didn't commit the murder. With a commanding roar, he declares Laurentia not guilty. Laurentia mumbles the words in disbelief, staring at her sudden freedom like it can't possibly be real. Donatella winked at her, reminding Sheba, "I told you to have faith in me." The young maid can only stare, still reeling from how wild everything just turned. Eunice is escorted off the witness stand, and she slows down right beside the girl who just got acquitted. She flashes Laurentia a real, warm smile and tells her she's genuinely thrilled she's here. Laurentia blurts out her name and all that pent-up emotion finally bursts out as pure, crashing relief. But that sweet little reunion gets ripped apart the moment the prosecutor barks a sharp command. Joan Wyson has been forced to wear a stone-cold mask of grim duty, feeding the guards those exact gestures they need. He barks the hard order, "Seize Eunice Peetinger right now." The royal guards instantly swarm the headmaid and haul her off into custody. Laurentia screams in protest, demanding to know what they're doing to her mentor. Joan finally admits his earlier blunder, then slams the truth down. Now he has to arrest the real killer. A cold, unshakable stare hardens his face as he carries out the job like it's the only thing that matters. He says Eunice just murdered a noble, and now she's sitting in the dark, waiting for the executioner's blade. The death penalty hits Laurentia like a lightning bolt, slamming her with a brand new, sudden terror. The gallery buzzes in unison, whispering that she had it coming. Laurentia screams for Eunice, but Jones shuts her down with a stern command: "Let it go, give up hope." The crowd screams into the night, desperate to know who in their right mind could ever forgive the murder of a noble. Joan hurls down a brutal verdict, saying that kind of person has no place left in their country and no right to live at all. He insists that the death penalty for her crime is coming, no way to stop it. A single calm voice slices right through the chaos, straight up declaring, "No, that's not true." Joan's mind goes completely blank as a stranger cuts in, sudden, confident, and totally impossible. Yoga flat out tells them Eunice won't be executed because she's not a murderer. He leans in on the stunned prosecutor and tells him to stop panicking and just focus on the facts of the case. He lays it out plain: for murder, the law demands proof you meant to kill someone, no half measures, no accidents. Eunice's reckless strike was meant to hurt, but it spiraled out of control and ended in a death. He slams the law down to show the injury led straight to death, no murder in sight. He swears that if he's her lawyer, he'll claw heaven and earth to stop her from ever getting executed. Joan clenched his jaw because his legal argument got torn apart piece by piece and left him fully defeated. Eunice nods, calm as the storm, knowing a brutal prison sentence is still the one ending she can't escape. As the guards haul her off, Laurentia darts toward her mentor for one final, desperate run. Tears spill down her face as she vows with absolute certainty that she'll come see you. Eunice whips around with a soft, sad smile and tells him she'll be right there waiting. They shove her out of the courtroom, and now her fate is hanging on Yuga's every move. Laurentia stood there, staring as she left, tears of sorrow and a wave of relief crashing across her face. Yuga strides up to the frantic young maid and lays a steady hand on her shoulder. He swears he'll defend Eunice with everything he's got, promising this ends with a win. Tears spill as she looks at him, her gratitude crashing through, faith in him burning bright again. From her high perch in the box, Princess Vivian leans in and watches the whole scene with razor-sharp focus. She's blown away by Yuga's win, and now she's forced to seriously rethink everything about him. The princess shakes her head and decides crushing him would be a waste, she'd rather use him. Later on, a maid shows up at the entrance of their brand new grand residence and greets them like royalty. She steps forward, flashes a grin, and introduces herself as Laurentia Postlethwaite, their brand new attendant. She declares she'll be there for the making, and she formally addresses Yuga as master. He tells her to drop the formal act, thanks her for jumping in, especially since she's been the one keeping the meals coming. She shoots him a question: "Does calling you master embarrass you?" Her idea to call him my lord instantly throws him into full-blown panic. He yelps, saying the idea sounds great, but it's still totally, absolutely unacceptable. Donatella fires off a question about her uniform and Laurentia snaps back, confirming her worst suspicion. She tells them it's Eunice's old work uniform, like the real one straight from her past. Unison put it in her hands as the headmaid's official emblem. She swears she'll serve with pride, never letting the uniform down, never letting shame touch it. Yoga watches Eunice's professionalism and just knows Eunice is going to be proud. He had zero clue that any moment now he'd get swept into a kingdom-shaking catastrophe. Life stays calm and peaceful for the trio as they settle into their brand new grand residence. At breakfast, Laurentia sweeps in with a tray of hot, freshly baked bread and sets it down for everyone at the table. Yuga grinned and eagerly asked for another bite, clearly loving every second of that mouthwatering meal. Donatella can't shake the feeling that she doesn't belong, like her own domestic skills are suddenly useless. Laurentia, the fresh new maid, grins and thanks Yuga for the compliment he dropped about her cooking. He clocks that Laurentia is an absolute top-tier maid, so good she even has him thinking he'd rather be turned into bread. She's got it all down, cooking, cleaning, and even the garden, every skill perfected. Donatella's problem is brutal. These weren't just tasks, they were her duties, and she was the one who was supposed to handle every last one. She can't stop thinking she's just a dead weight, like a freeloader who brings nothing to the table. Her brutal necromancy might be terrifying, but in their day-to-day life it's basically useless. While Donatella sinks into despair, a bright-eyed Yoga cheers her on and begs for one more helping of food. He lets out a satisfied sigh and grins, basically saying, "That meal today was seriously delicious." Donatella pokes at him with a grin, hinting he's packing on a little too much weight. He pleads for her to stop, panicked that at his age his metabolism is already slowing down. Laurentia chimes in and swears a well-built man carries himself with pure dignity and instant presence. Yoga snaps that it's not exactly comforting, because Laurentia swings a letter right into his hands. He spots the ornate wax seal he knows by heart, stamped on that mysterious envelope like a whisper from his past. He realizes he can't make heads or tails of the script, so he grabs Laurentia and begs her to read it out loud for him. Donatella puffs out her cheeks, pouting like crazy, because reading for him is her job. Laurentia blares the news: an invite to a royal palace dinner party is finally here. Yoga's jaw drops in shock and Laurentia leans in, telling him this is nothing short of an incredible turn of events. She lays it out how insanely rare it is for a commoner, and he can barely wrap his head around it. He can't stop picturing it, those people begging to hear the juicy secrets behind his legendary legal career. He bragged about every brutal grind he survived in this weird, chaotic new world. Donatella shoots off a dry comment like, "So you're praising him now? He's not used to that at all." Yoga assumes the invitation is from the king, but Laurentia snaps back and corrects him. Donatella snaps to it with a jolt: the invitation is coming straight from the princess. Yoga grins like he just hit the jackpot, calling it a perk of the job, but Donatella stays stone-cold quiet. Donatella's eyes squeeze shut with sharp suspicion because she can feel it, this is a trap and she knows it. Seeing her silent, troubled face, Yoga leaned in and demanded to know what was wrong. She replays the trial in her mind, thrown off balance by the princess's icy, calculating stare. That night, beneath a sky packed with stars, Yoga clenches his resolve and gets ready to head straight for the palace. Laurentia and Donatella linger by the door, watching him as they send him off for the night. He flashes a cheerful goodbye, then Donatella suddenly snaps, "Wait," and stops him cold. She slaps her hand to his chest, and a gentle burst of magic ignites and starts to glow. A glowing magic circle blossoms as she slams a protective ward onto his lucky tie. Donatella lunges at Yuga and slams him as a glowing magical circle burns against his chest. He demanded to know what she'd done, then she snapped a cursed warding spell over his time. He swears the palace is safe, but she shoots back that the spell is non-negotiable. He stares at him with total conviction, sure the magic will shield him. You could softly run your hand over her head, easing her worries one by one. He grins and tells her magic has saved him again and again, so he'll gladly take it. Blushing, Donatella snaps that she's not a child at all. With a bright grin and a cheerful wave, Yoga declares he's headed straight for the palace. Laurentia leaned in and asked Donatella, "So that necktie, are you saying it's the cloth wrapped around your neck?" She stares at its organ pattern, feeling every nerve twitch, something about it looks wrong and she can't figure what it's meant to do. Laurentia grins and teases, asking if Donatella's got feelings for her master. With a knowing grin she tells him straight up, a man she can trust is the hottest kind. Donatella whips her head away, flustered to the core, and outright denies that's even the real reason. Laurentia giggled and said, "Master Shiba is hopeless when it comes to romance no matter what." A royal retainer bursts in and tells Princess Viviana, "Shiba Yuga is here." The princess takes the news in stride, keeps her cool, and calmly fans herself beside her advisor. She snaps orders to her retainer to carry out the plan, then leaves the whole thing in his hands. Her advisor, Selena, leans in and calls the princess by her nickname Vivi. Selena can't help but wonder out loud if she's truly ready to pull Yuga into their circle. From behind her fan, the princess just nods, no doubts, no second thoughts, confirming her choice. She can't believe it, Yuga is way more capable than she ever imagined. Because he's crazy good at what he does, she's made up her mind, she's going to put him to work. She declares, ice cold and unshakable, that she always gets exactly what she wants. Yuga grins, lifts his champagne glass high, and shouts for another refill. He loudly praises the princess, thanking her for the amazing hospitality she's pouring out in the grand dining hall. He tells her the beer was amazing, leaning in close as a grin lights up his face. The princess leaned in and told him to spell out this whole all-you-can-drink thing. He lays it out. It's a deal where the price stays the same and you can keep sipping unlimited drinks. She leans in, eyes gleaming. If his world can mass-produce cheap alcohol, that's wild. An old nobleman leans in and tells the princess, don't sweat Yuga's weird ways. The princess bluntly tells Yuga that keeping him as a lawyer feels like a total waste. Yuga's gut drops when she blurts out that sudden, dead-serious line. He shot her a sharp question about what she meant, especially after she just praised his legal skills. She waves his work off and fires back, so tell me, how many people have you truly saved? She swears his otherworldly knowledge could pull tens of millions of people back from the brink. Grizzled nobles at the table lean in and push him to finally hear the princess out. She presses in close, whispers for him to drop the lawyer life and serve her instead. Her whispered offer hangs between them, shimmering in the silence. With her standing that close, Yuga froze, then blurted her name in a shaky, surprised stammer. An old man steps in and warns, defy the princess and you're basically defying God's will. The princess bursts into laughter, waving off the man's intensity like it's nothing more than a joke. She begs Yuga for more, but a cranky old man shoots her down with loud, bitter disapproval. The old man mutters venom about conservative, foolish old men while he drinks. The princess snaps, I won't be stupid, and then she gets exactly what she wants. She lifts her glass high and cheers to Luano's rise and the hard-won growth that made it possible. A chilling silence drops out of nowhere, and you can feel the story twisting into something dark. Yuga's eyes snap wide with shock as a brutal wave of sickness crashes over him. A servant grabs him and yells for him to hang on just a little longer. The servant hustles the ailing Yuga into a guest room and shuts the night down for him. Yuga groans, utterly spent, and crumples onto the bed still fully dressed. Antonello towers over the unconscious body, eyes locked and unmoving. He snaps a cold, determined look over his shoulder, like he's already made up his mind. He swings the door open and tells the person outside, come in now. The grand castle looms in the stormy clouds, silent, brutal, and impossible to ignore. Yuga groans and starts to wake up from his drugged sleep, inch by inch. He jolts upright with a loud yawn, and that brutal stench of alcohol hangs in the air like a bad omen. He looks down, then stops dead in his tracks, realizing his neck time is ticking. He snaps awake with a jolt. Turns out, he ended up staying the night in that castle. He yells the alarm, clutching his lucky tie as it burns in his hands. As he checks the wreckage, he suddenly feels it, something else is here with him. He whips around and there she is, sprawled beside him, eyes wide open, staring with lifeless emptiness. He stammers, totally thrown off, wondering if this wild moment is going to be a one-night thing. His mind spins in sheer shock, drowning in disbelief at the impossible scene. He reaches out with a hand that won't stop shaking, certain this can't possibly be real. A terrified scream tears through the air from the sky-high tower of the royal castle. Guards snap to attention and identify the victim as Luciana Velg, just a 32-year-old castle servant. Prosecutor Jones slams down the verdict. Her death was asphyxiation sealed by a binding spell. He declares it proves one thing beyond doubt. This was a murder carried out with magic. He says the magical investigation has already proven it. Jones' eyes sharpen into a glare as he braces to deliver his final accusation. He jabs a finger into the air, pointing like it's a trigger, and calls out the suspect, Shiba Yuga. Yuka's eyes flare wide with pure, helpless shock, like her brain can't even process what she's seeing. He begs Joan to hold on, his voice cracking as he questions how anyone could believe that ridiculous accusation. He screams that he's innocent, insisting he can't remember killing a single person. Joan stays cool and flat out says every scrap of evidence points straight at him. He leans in and asks Yuga, so you're finally starting to get what's going on. He makes it crystal clear, Yuga was the only guest at last night's party. A chilling diagram lays out the crime scene like a boxed-in quarter, there's no way out. 3 soldiers kept watch like stone statues, so nobody could slip inside without getting caught. Shon leans in, asking if he's keeping up, and Yuga can only manage a shaky weakly nod. He says the guards swore they saw 3 different movements that night. The victim slipped in first, and then Antonello stormed in, Yuga in tow. At last, Antonello, the servant, slipped out of the room alone. Yuga snaps that it's weird as hell for him to be the only one everyone's pointing at. He's panicking as he blurts out the wild idea, What if Antonella was the one who actually killed her? Joan smirks like she already knows the ending and shoots it down, insisting it's impossible. You're hit with relentless demands to explain yourself, and the frustration keeps boiling as the prosecutor acts like he already has the answer. Joan leans in and tells Antonello he's nothing but a lowly servant, just a punch-drunk escort with no real standing. He insists there's no way a plain servant like that could ever pull off magic. He tells you that magic users are almost unheard of, and every single one is pure gold. In that castle there are only 3 people, and every single one of them is powerful, not some servant. With a gift like that, there's no way a man like him should be stuck serving anyone. And at just 18, Antonello's guilt feels even more impossible. Yuga insists that the only way this could have happened is if that possibility was 0, because Antonello must have changed it. Joan shuts it down fast, calling it pure nonsense and nothing more than shaky guesswork. He flips the whole argument, bluntly saying the odds point to Yuga's guilt. He insists the odds that Yuga will be the magic user are way higher than Antonello's. Yuga erupts saying he can't use magic, and he demands proof right there and then. Joan nods and says he's got the proof, enough to point straight at the culprit. Because Yuga is a god-chosen, otherworldly freak of nature, using magic isn't even weird, it's practically destiny. Prosecutor Jones insists that even if Yuga's magic won't work, he's still staying on the suspect list. He tells them they don't have the luxury of trusting Yuga's innocent claim, they have to doubt it. Joan fires off a razor-sharp challenge, daring Yuga to prove, right here, that he can't use magic. Yuga gets it the moment the impossible demand drops. This is the devil's proof, a trap so logical it'll snap shut on him. He can't stop thinking about how his otherworldly nature has always made him a freak of nature in Luanu. To them, it's totally normal to assume he's got powers that smash right through their common sense. Joan leans in and asks Yuga, "You get it now, do you understand my whole predicament?" He leans in and tells a tense Yuga, right to his face, that they're taking him away. Standing before a towering throne, Joan boldly announces that the king has called him in for judgment. Yuga gets slammed with a brutal challenge: defend yourself and prove you're not capable of wielding magic. Joan gives him one last option: summon a different lawyer to come defend him. Yuga weighs his choices, and the word magic keeps slamming through his thoughts like a thunderclap. A sudden jolt of realization flares in his determined, wide-open eyes. He makes his move and demands they bring in Donatella Bastionari, his lawyer. In a jarring flashback, young Antonello, just a village kid, suddenly awakens a mysterious fiery power out of nowhere. His parents spot his raw talent and push him to grind even harder, begging him to master magic and become someone truly legendary. But their kindness is a mask. They hand him over to shadowy men, and those strangers call him their objective. Young Antonello trembles in pure terror when his own father throws him aside and sells him out for money. A towering silhouette looms over the boy and promises that he'll use his talent for her. The boy snaps his gaze upward, because with his master's command, his fate is already locked in. Right now, Donatella is sprinting through the palace hallways like the walls are on fire. The palace guard yells at her to stop. "Don't you dare run down the hallway." She cuts him out completely and sprints for the courtroom, eyes locked on the finish line. She strides up to the colossal, jewel-laced doors of the chamber where the trial is about to begin. She smashed through the doors, shouting Yuga's name like a warning bell. He whips around to her, desperation crashing across his face, then relief hits so hard it almost breaks him. He begs her for help, standing right there beside Liliana and Joan, not letting up as his plea crashes into the air. Thick rope yanks his wrists tight in front of him, like a brutal warning that freedom is out of reach. Joan calmly lays out every brutal detail of the murder case, and Donatella just stands there, stunned. Liliana stands right beside Yuga, and the worry on her face looks almost unbearable. She watches it all unravel, sweat sliding down her temple as the tension keeps climbing. Joan whips around to the king and demands his take on everything that's happening. The king, perched on his throne, leans in with razor focus, then finally hammers out his judgment. He agrees with the prosecution's logic: if Yuga can truly pull off magic. Yuga whips around to Donatella, his last shred of hope, and pleads with her to take his case. He begged her to step in and somehow prove, once and for all, that he was totally innocent. Donatella turns her head, eyes narrowing, and demands what he even means, then insists coldly that she can't possibly do something like that. She snaps him back to reality. This isn't his usual style of bold defense. This is impossible. Yuga blurts out that he doesn't even have the faintest idea what magic is, much less how to wield it. Joan stares at Donatella's anxious expression and clocks that Yuga's just putting on an act. Donatella whips a glance over her shoulder, and defiance hardens her face like stone. She snaps at Joan, barking that he's being ridiculous, because she's fully sure Yuga can't use magic. Joan shuts her eyes and shrugs off her own testimony like it's nothing but lies. With a sly smirk, he hints that Yuga might have been hiding his magical powers from her. Donatella flat-out declares that Yuga's real nature and his magic just can't be possible. Her voice surges with passion as she insists, straight from the heart, that he's the kindest person she's ever met. She stands in front of Yuga, swearing with shaking certainty that he'd never lay a finger on murder. Yuga stared, his eyes bulging with pure shock as she fiercely defended herself. Joan smirks, and her emotional outburst can't shake him a single bit. He leans in and tells her, "Your feelings don't matter one bit in a court of law." He confronts Donatella and demands answers. Why would Yuga drag her in for an emotional plea? Donatella goes completely still, and the truth in his words hits her like a punch. She realizes Yuga didn't call her out of feelings, he had a real reason. Joan flashes a confident grin and tells Yuga he's got a problem. She holds the edge in this one. He tells her she's got a rare, instinctive grasp of magic, like it's been inside her all along. Donatella leans back and stares at the darkness, wrestling with what magic really is, then a brand new plan ignites in her mind. She admits that from everything she knows, there's no legit way to prove something didn't happen. She tells him this: magic always leaves a mark, but you can't pin it on whoever cast it. She points out that the victim was murdered by a deadly binding spell, so the culprit had to slip this spell in place right next to the sleeping Yuga. The servant Antonello was the only one who could have gotten close enough to the victim. She slams her final verdict: he's the killer, and demands, "So you don't believe me?" Her palm flickers with a soft glow as she hardens her resolve and commits to the plan. Joan, taken aback, shoots down Antonello's questions, saying her theory isn't enough to let him question him. He snaps at her to shut up, because her story still isn't getting us through the trial. Donatella snaps her tone into steel and orders them to summon Antonello Mowgli. Yuga, drained and exhausted, softly calls her name. He murmurs a calm reassurance and puts all his trust in her without a single doubt. She grabs his hand and swears they'll crush this trial for real, no doubt, no backing down. From their lofty thrones, King Marius, Princess Vivian, and Liliana stare down at the chaos unfolding below. Servant Antonello strides into the court, snaps into a deep bow, and declares his name like he owns the moment. The king towers from his throne and beams down at the young man, pulling him in with a warm welcome. Antonello shot the king a sharp look and demanded to know what kind of business he had with him. Donatella's eyes cut narrow as she snaps at him to stop pretending he doesn't know. She's zeroing in on the murder case right in front of them. She slams the truth into the room and demands to know, "Are you really the one behind it?" She jabs a finger at him, shouting that he can use magic, and then she points out how he used it to murder the victim. He snaps at him to spill the truth right now. Yuga sits in the defendant's box, staring down the moment when everything he is comes down to one decision. Antonello scoffed, sneering, "So you're saying a lowly servant like me can actually use magic?" He snaps, asking if she's mocking him, his voice dripping with fake outrage. Donatella's jaw drops as he blurts out a furious denial, right out of the gate. He blurts out an apology for his rudeness, acting like he's offended that a lowly elf even dared suspect him. He swears he only just found out about the whole incident, and there's no way he could have been the killer. Donatella insists he's the only real suspect, but he shuts her down, because he can't stand how persistent she keeps being. He insists human magic users are nearly extinct, so it's impossible for him to be the culprit. Donatella lunges to cut in, but he steamrolls right over her with his slick, manipulative spiel. Then he flips the whole situation on its head, hinting that if Yuga truly did nothing, there's a darker twist waiting in the wings. He locks eyes with Donatella, a sinister grin spreading across his face, then leans in and asks if she's his accomplice. Donatella's whole body freezes, she's stunned speechless by the audacity of that accusation. She snapped, "What garbage are you even spitting?" He weaves a wicked elf scheme, bending a human like a puppet to land a brutal revenge. Donatella is completely stunned by his wild, baseless claims. He declares that her unconvincing arguments hit harder than her logic ever could. Yuga screams at him to stop, warning him he can't drag Donatella through his lies. Donatella realizes something crucial: if he's that kind of guy, her plan will fall into place even faster. Antonello, completely baffled, snapped, "What do you mean? because he couldn't wrap his head around why anyone would ever suspect him. Donatella admits she can't prove he can't use magic, but then she smirks and says there's a way to prove he can . Antonello scoffs at the whole idea, flat out declaring it's impossible. Donatella grins like she owns the place, then wags a finger at him and insists it's honestly way simpler than he thinks. Donatella tells them it's simple, magic users don't learn magic from books, they're born with it in their bones. Yuga stares at his assistant, wringing his nerves as he wonders what wild plan she's cooking up. She drops a simple analogy: one second you see a ball come flying at your face, and the very next second your body reacts on instinct. Just like that, she insists, any magic user will snap to action and fling spells the moment danger comes their way. With a fearless step, she locks in on the servant, Antonello, and nothing else matters. Yuga just stared in terror as the nightmare finally clicked in his head. With grim finality, Donatella snaps out Antonello's name, and her voice thunders through the hall like a death sentence. A swirling orb of dark energy ignites in her hand as she declares, straight to his face, that she's coming to kill him. Antonello freezes in shock as she snaps that if he wants to live, he'd better unleash magic right now. Yuga gapes in disbelief, stunned by the wild audacity of her deadly gamble. King Marius was just as stunned. He stammered, begging her to hold on for one moment. In the dead of night, Liliana bursts into tears and screams for Donatella to stop, her hand gripping her sword like it might explode. She leans in and bluntly reminds Donatella that using offensive magic in the king's court is strictly forbidden. Donatella snaps back that if she hesitates, Yuga's death sentence becomes unavoidable. Her eyes ignite, glowing with a terrifying power from beyond this world. She stands atop a floor of shattered bones, locks eyes, and coldly orders one word: die. A savage wave of dark energy crashes forward, hunting down a terrified servant. A crackling orb of necromancy surges forward, zeroing in on its helpless target. Antonello chokes out a gasp, and his calm mask crumbles in the blink of an eye. A tight close-up snaps on his face, tortured by a terror so raw it looks like a living mask. At the very last second, a dazzling wall of light explodes into place and slams the spell aside. Yuga froze there with a bead of sweat sliding down his temple, shaking between pure shock and sudden, overwhelming relief. King Marius locks onto the scene with a cold, calculating stare, like he's already counting every move. Princess Vivian grins as she realizes the spell is nothing but a harmless illusion. She points out that Donatella won't face charges, but the result is still the same. Donatella crumples in defeat, Yuga's shadow of suspicion never lifts, and she completely fails to clear his name. She stares up in total shock, and all she can manage is a trembling whisper: this can't be happening. She panics hard, convinced her training has to kick in right now, no matter what's coming. A nearby guard gapes and snaps that the criminal's frantic, stumbling fight looks downright disgraceful. Vivian leans in over Donatella and declares, cold as steel, that her failure is a fact that can't be rewritten. And because of that disaster, she declares it, Shiba Yuga is headed straight for a death sentence. Yuga wears a grim, resigned stare, like his fate is already stamped and sealed. The verdict booms through the massive courtroom as he and Donatella stand there, utterly alone. The guard strides by, chuckling coldly at their crushing defeat. The guard marches on, grinning like he just won, still soaking up the fact they failed. The defeated pair are trapped in the shadow of those towering, grand columns, and the whole hall feels like it's closing in on them. With his head hanging low, Yuga lets out a low, quiet chuckle. The princess stares at Donatella and realizes every single one of her hard efforts ended up meaning absolutely nothing. Donatella jerks her head up, and pure, crushing despair floods her face. The princess admits Donatella's talent, then shuts it down fast, saying it still wasn't enough. Donatella can't even speak, like her last hope got snuffed out for good. The guard leans in and spits that everything she did was a total waste of time. Antonello throws up fake confusion and asks why the guard is staring at him like that. He sneers at Yuga, basically saying, "What a shame you didn't get that head of yours fixed." Then he erupts into a thunderous, victorious laugh that rolls out like a victory bell. The flashback rips open as Donatella clamps a cursed warding spell onto Yuga's tie. Antonello remembers spotting that strange cloth and realizing it was the key to a defensive magic seal. This brutal enchantment was forged to lock in Yuga's total safety, no matter what. But Donatella reveals the spell finally snapped, and right then, disaster slammed down on him. She snaps at Antonello, pinning the blame on the brilliant magic user who tore apart her ward. She fires off furious questions, demanding to know why he would use such a rare gift for murder. He studies her emotional plea with a steel-cold stare, completely unmoved. She screams that the man he's trying to kill isn't a villain at all, he's a hero who uses his power for good. Gadril stays in her own realm, staring as the whole scene unfolds right before her eyes. Yuga stands stone still behind Donatella as she fights for her life, begging with every ounce of desperation. Donatella bursts out that Shiba didn't just help her, he saved her life and he's her own personal savior. She drops to her knees and begs Antonello to finally confess his sins. She grabs his attention and pleads, "Confess your crime and use that power to do something good." Antonello acts like her words are yanking a buried memory right out of him. In a flashback, a little boy clenches his fist, swears he'll become a knight and promises to crush evil with his magic. Right now he stares down at that pleading elf girl, hanging on every word. He admits that using magic to kill someone is a total mistake. He pauses for half a heartbeat, then drops a chilling, dismissive "but" like a final punchline. His face contorts into a sneer as he denies it all, firing back, "What are you even talking about?" He snaps at the foolish elf that he's got zero time for her non-stop rambling. He leans in with a smug grin and snaps, "So, is your pointless argument finally done?" He lets out a tiny, contemptuous chuckle, laughing at her like it's nothing. He brushes off her plea, calling it a cold-blooded masterpiece meant to twist the court's judgment. He insists it's nothing but a pointless distraction right before the inevitable death sentence drops. Yuga lunges to cut in, but Prosecutor Joan shuts him down cold and says there's no point dragging the talk any further. Joan nods along with Antonello, her eyes shut tight like she's already won, smug certainty pouring off her. King Marius gives a firm nod, ready to slam the trial shut. Joan steps up and formally demands that the king finally pass his ultimate verdict. Donatella screams in pure horror, "No." She throws her hands up and begs them to hold on, because she knows Yuga will get killed if they don't. She gets a terrifying vision, Yuga's head trapped in a guillotine right before it's about to fall. She pushes him to drop the problem and grab any distraction, anything at all, to buy them more time. Joan snaps off her plea and tells her straight, the king has no time for this. Princess Vivian, though, flashes a dangerously intriguing look. She grins behind her fan, eyes glittering as she watches her intricate scheme roll along perfectly. Yuga's brutal scheme gets him sentenced to death, then the execution gets pushed back and the clock just won't stop. He only gets pardoned if he swears absolute, never-ending loyalty to her. He'll be forever grateful to the person who saved his life. And Princess Vivian will rise up as the new true king. Donatella leans in and whispers sorry to Yuga, heart sinking because she feels like she let him down. Vivienne shoots the king a confident grin, swears she always gets her way and dares him to move forward. Donatella watches in sheer terror, eyes bulging with pure fear as everything goes terrifyingly wrong. She whips around to Yuga, her final lifeline in this absolute nightmare. Joan tells Yuga that it's downright terrifying to go up against a decision this important. Yuga steadies his voice and calls out to the prosecutor, "Hold on, wait a minute." He spins his back to the court, then turns to Joan like, "What did you just say?" Key players just stare, baffled and irritated at his bizarre question. The princess asks if he means her, but he shoots back that it's wrong to seek a verdict from him. She yanks her fans shut and a sharp flicker of worry flashes in her eyes because he's clocked something. Yuga's mind snaps back to that pivotal moment, the one with the next time exchange. Joan tells the king loud and clear that the chat about the necktie really did happen. Yuga blurts, "What is this supposed to be?" and then snaps, "There's something about it that feels seriously wrong." A triumphant spark flashes in his eyes as he grins and fires off, "So, what even is a necktie?" He whips around to the prosecutor and demands to know, does Joan know what it is? Joan shuts his eyes and with nerves of steel, admits he has absolutely no clue. Joan Weiss shot questions in the yoga pose, staring at the cloth wrapped around his neck. Donatella Watch looked totally baffled, she'd never heard of a necktie a day in her life. Yuga smirks, then whips the whole situation around, right as he fires back with a question of his own. He grilled Antonello, demanding to know how he even figured out that a necktie was just a piece of cloth. Yuga drives the point home, eyes locked on target and never wavering. He whips around to the servant and asks straight up why his knowledge feels so damn odd. Yuga already knows this necktie came from Japan, something nobody in this world has even heard of. Antonello gets interrogated again, and you can practically see his calm start to shatter. Yuga tracks down Donatella and demands she spill the truth to the court. Donatella blurts out the truth, and Tonalo instantly realizes the necktie is wearing cloth. He figured it out fast because that cursed thing wasn't metal or stone at all, it was cloth. She snaps, "You knew it all along, because it was you who shattered my curse." Tonalo snaps his tongue in pure frustration. He stammers that he was just going with the conversation, like he had no choice. Donatella shrieks, "That's impossible, because nobody was even bringing up neckties in the first place." Antonello gritted his teeth, and his pathetic excuse got obliterated in an instant. Donatella strides up and slams her undeniable argument down like it's the final word. King leans in, eyes locked, and a heavy seriousness settles across his face. Princess Vivian stares as the lawyer's trap springs shut, and a spark of curiosity ignites in her. Donatella snaps her finger in a furious, accusing point, calling out the real culprit in front of the entire court. Prosecutor Jones stands there, watching his whole case unravel at lightning speed. She fires off her final, breathtaking declaration, then Tonalo drops the truth: he's a magic user. The king sits there, staring into the distance, and thinks one single statement just isn't going to be enough to lock in a conviction. Donatella stares in disbelief, realizing her argument might not be able to hold up after all. And he smirks at Nello's stammers, insisting he's nothing more than a humble servant. The king points to Antonello as a strong suspect, but he insists they'll need a full investigation before they can call it. He demands a full background check on the servant, from the day they were born up to this very moment. The final verdict gets delayed, and Yuga and Donatella finally get a breath of relief. The king boots Yuga out on the spot but slams a strict order on everyone to keep him under non-stop watch. From her seat, Princess Vivian snaps her tongue in frustration. She can't believe it, this trial is ending and there's no verdict. She slams her ornate fan shut with a crisp crack that snaps the air. She blurts out, wondering if the second trial will actually go off the way they planned. As the guards drag him away, Antonello whips his head back, terrified out of his mind. The king leans in and calmly tells Vivienne, "Don't fret, I've got this." Antonello begs with shaking urgency, insisting he refuses to go. He screeches that he won't die, then a magic circle detonates under his feet. A guard yells in alarm, snapping to attention the moment he senses the sudden burst of overwhelming magic. Guards shout at the king, holding their breath, waiting for his command. Liliana yanks her sword out and barks at Antonello to be seized right now. Antonello pleads for them to capture him, and panic keeps clawing harder and harder at his chest. He throws himself forward, pleading for his life, begging them to spare him, "Don't kill me." The royal court leans in as the servant's desperate, frantic plea spills out like he's about to break from sheer panic. Joan's face hardens as the whole situation careens out of control. Princess Vivienne peeks at coolly from behind her fan, eyes sharp and unreadable. Donatella lunges straight in front of Yuga, yelling at him to back off. Her eyes flare with a blazing glow as she slams down a crushing binding spell, and the damage hits instantly. A storm of dark magical energy erupts from her hands, blasting everything in its path. Yuga just stares, sweat dripping down his temple like the moment's about to explode. Antonello jerks his head up, eyes wide as a brutal counterattack crashes down on him all at once. His eyes blow wide with sheer terror as the spell crashes down and swallows him whole. Yugo keeps his eyes locked as his assistant looms over the neutralized enemy. Antonello gets slammed hard backward, his body twisting in pure, searing agony. The spell shockwave blasts the royal guards flying out of the blast zone. Guards are left staring, was it magic, or did the man just self-destruct on his own? The king slams down his command, sealing the castle tight, and then orders the magic investigation squad to summon at once. You could go straight to Donatella and demand, "What just happened?" King Marius shuts his eyes tight and grimly tries to process the violent, roaring chaos swallowing his court. He whips his head toward Yuga and offers a heartfelt apology for doubting him. He finally admits he messed up, doubting a man who's been guided by the gods. He admits they still need an investigation, but he's basically saying the trial's outcome is already a done deal. The king tightens his grip and prepares to unleash his last, game-deciding verdict. His voice hit like thunder, blasting the verdict: Shiba Yuga is not guilty. Back home, Yuga brags to everyone that Donatella just saved his life again. Donatella blushes and insists with full conviction that Yuga did everything all by himself. Yuga breaks into a warm smile and thanks her for the help that's been absolutely priceless. He swears he'd already be dead without her, and Laurentia can't stop praising her killer skills. Donatella's cheeks burn bright as she clutches her teacup, mortified. She tells Laurentia, "I didn't do it for anything else, I was just doing my job as her assistant." Yuga goes quiet for a moment and the lesson finally clicks, turning everything he's learned into something truly valuable. He realizes Laurentia isn't just a maid, she's brutally capable. And Donatella brings skills nobody else can touch, only she can do what she does. She clenches her fist and vows loud and clear that being his assistant is her destiny. Their peaceful moment gets ripped apart the second a total stranger crashes in out of nowhere. "You guys practically jumped," when Liliana bursts through the door like a storm. Liliana, shaking with distress, blurts that something awful has happened and begs him to come right now. She drops the shocking truth, something no one ever imagined has happened to Princess Vivian. Vivian's been arrested, and we even catch a glimpse of her being hauled away in custody. Yuga goes completely still when he hears the princess has been arrested. His whole household is bombarding him with one question: what in the world happened? He plants his feet and declares, "I have to go right now and I'm hearing the whole story in full." Liliana leans in and tells him, voice heavy, that this mess is way more complicated than he thinks. Her face crumples into pure despair as she blurts out that if things keep going, every last corner of the kingdom of Luano is about to be wiped out. Yuga locks eyes with Donatella and her words hit like a punch, heavy, instant, and impossible to ignore. A huge crowd seething with rage has packed into the city's central square. A bunch of ruthless nobles are strapped into wooden stocks right there on a raised platform, trapped in plain sight for everyone to see. Yuga shoves through the crowd, barreling toward the front like he can't afford to be late. He and Donatella stare at the brutal scene, and pure shock hits them like a punch. Yuga snaps back in horrified disbelief, gaping at the spectacle like, "What in the world is this?" A wave of terror crashes over him as he finally realizes this isn't a battlefield at all, it's an execution ground. King Marius lifts his hand high, roaring his words to every citizen in the kingdom. He steps forward and declares, "I am King Marius Leuenot," and his voice booms like thunder. He slams the verdict down and declares the condemned did something absolutely unforgivable. They hatched a plan to topple him, pure high treason that threatened the whole state. Joan Wyson snaps her hand out, calling the last prisoner forward like the final piece of the puzzle. Yuga and Donatella stare in horror as their faces drain of color, fear hitting them like a punch. Princess Vivian is dragged on stage before a raging crowd. Everyone knows she's the ringleader. The king stuns everyone by saying his own daughter is the mastermind behind the rebellion. His voice thundered through the air, sealing her fate with an execution on the spot. Amid the chaos, Shiba Yuga storms forward demanding answers. What on earth is happening here? That night, Liliana finally admits she hasn't heard the full details either. A trembling hand grips a pack sealed in blood. This is the killer proof, no doubt. Yuga snapped, furious, demanding to know if a blood oath is truly enough to seal an execution. The first princess stares on, grim and steady, already knowing she has no choice but to act. She makes it crystal clear, their real mission isn't the plan, it's saving every single life tied to it. A sprawling, awe-smashing landscape lays bare just how terrifyingly strong the condemned noble houses truly are. That pitch-black, empty street sets your nerves on edge, like a warning for the civil war about to explode. Yuka hears the bombshell, rebels are already starting to rally and mass their forces. Liliana clenches her jaw and says, "If this keeps going, Luanu is going to get wiped out." Donatella can't believe it, she blurts out, asking if anyone actually tried to talk the king down. Liliana shuts her eyes and relives every failed attempt she made to convince him. The king's furious glare seals his vow, he'll crush every single soul that dares to oppose him. A frantic voice from the crowd rips through the chaos, shouting Yuga's name like it's an emergency. Panicked Renette Galvia bursts in, eyes wide, and throws herself at Yuga, begging him desperately to save her. He snatches Yuga's collar, leaning in to remind him straight up that they're friends. Renette screams that Lord Galvia, her father, is about to be murdered. Yuga staggers backward as the first princess steps forward and makes her formal request. Liliana steps into the play and tells Yuga, straight to his face, that he's their last and only hope. The first princess throws herself at his feet, begging him to defend the accused and save Luanu. Yuga points at himself, stunned out of his mind by how insane the weight of their request feels. The first princess grabs him and demands he prove their innocence, because the execution is about to happen. Renette grabs his arm and begs, because his father's life is dangling by a thread. Donatella tilts her head up at Yuga, her face betraying quiet worry. Yuga stares at his hands, stunned, and he can't shake the crushing feeling that he's totally powerless. He starts to voice his doubt, and it wipes out every last shred of confidence in him. He's convinced there's no universe where he can pull this off. He replays every past failure in his head and convinces himself he can't possibly save the whole country. He spins away, fully admitting he has zero proof and absolutely no clue what just happened. That blank execution platform screams one terrifying truth: this is a battle he can't win. He feels a small hand slip into his, and in that quiet touch, pure support speaks louder than words. He locks eyes with Donatella, and she stares back like she trusts him with her whole heart. His resolve snaps into something unbreakable. He's a lawyer, and he refuses to quit. The packed crowd turns their heads as one lone figure strides straight toward the platform. Yuga strides up to the court and declares himself the God-chosen lawyer, Shiba Court. The king leans over, glaring down as he demands, "What business do you have at the execution?" Yuga goes, "Treason isn't a crime anymore under their brand new laws." He strides up and calls the king out, demanding to know if this stunt really doesn't break God's law. He slams his demand to halt the execution right now, and he's ready to drag everyone into an on-the-spot trial. The king snorts, then smirks, accepting the challenge to run the trial on the spot. He commands his prosecutor, Joan, to start firing the first question: "Do you understand?" Joan Coley totally shuts down Yuga's frantic warnings about the kingdom's fate. He declares he'll carry out his duty, then tells Yuga, "Now you do yours." Yuga's stunned because the prosecutor's icy resolve doesn't crack for a second. Joan snaps her gaze to the king and kicks off his opening speech. He steps forward and officially hammers Princess Vivian and 8 nobles with a murder accusation. He breaks down the recent murders of Kara Belksman and Luciana Belg, one brutal detail at a time. He insists these murders aren't random at all, they're part of a conspiracy pulled off by the 9 accused. He tells you the princess's real motive was simple: she wanted to gather allies and even pull a lawyer in. The princess just stares, stone cold, while they accuse her of plotting to grab the throne. Joan slams the law of complicity and declares that every single conspirator will face death. Yuga gapes in shock as the prosecutor hurls claims that sound totally out of this world. He shoots his hand up, instantly challenging the conspiracy's logic. The first princess finally nods, then admits the plan feels so tangled it can't possibly be real. She insists the young princess would never, ever try something this huge. Yuga insists that you can't throw that kind of accusation around without proof. Joan smirks and shoots back, claiming there's one simple way to do it. He finally drops the truth: magic did it. An arcane sigil flares in his eye like a warning light. Yuga and Donatella lean in close as he finally blurts out the forbidden magic's name: alteration. Joan tells you the princess used this magic to twist people's memories like strings. And I stare at the scene as he lays out, step by step, how those false memories were planted. The whole crowd explodes in chaos, stunned to discover the princess wasn't just royalty, she was secretly a magic user. Joan bursts in and announces he's got the proof, then declares it's time to call his witness. Yuga's stomach drops in shock when they drag servant Antonello to the stand. Antonello is ordered to step up and confirm whether the princess can wield alteration magic. The princess stares at him, her face like stone, cold, emotionless, and impossible to read. From behind, Antonello leans in and confirms it. Every word the prosecutor said is dead-on true. He swears that the princess nearly rewrote his own memories. He says her magic stole his breath clean away, so hard it nearly killed him. He claims he only made it because Donatella's protective spell wrapped him up for what came next. He finally blurts out the confession that seals his fate: he murdered the princess on her own orders. Jonas froze, totally blindsided by that blunt, no-holds-barred confession. The king pounds his fist and declares, without a shred of doubt, that his own daughter is the murderer. He whips around to Vivian and demands to know what excuse she thinks will save her after all those crimes. Yuga and Donatella can only stare in helpless horror as it looks like their entire case has just been smashed to pieces. The princess shuts her eyes and blurts out the truth: she ordered the murders. She finally confesses she and her followers have been plotting to seize the throne. Yuga freezes as the crowd finally hears it. This princess just confessed she did it, and the whole place erupts in shock. She declares there's just one reason she went traitor. Standing before the royal standard, she fires off a bold declaration: this kingdom is too weak to stand. The king leans in, hears her speak with quiet honor, and fully accepts just how deeply she loves peace. But her face twists into a vicious snarl as she spits that his nature is too soft. She screams about the invasion creeping closer, and the elf rebellion ready to explode. She declares, loud and fearless, that the kingdom won't survive unless it builds real military might. If anyone hesitates, she snaps that Luano is doomed to perish. She marched up to the king and demanded her execution be used as a terrifying warning to everyone. The king lets out a grim grunt, swallowing her tragic sacrifice like it's the only price that could save the realm. He tells Vivienne that even with tears streaking her face, her dignity shines through, and her words come out so eloquent they hit like a punch. He lifts his sword high and declares he'll execute her with his own hands. The crowd murmurs with bated breath, bracing themselves for the moment the beautiful princess is about to die. The first princess gasps in total despair, and it feels like every last flicker of hope just vanished. In the crowd, an old nobleman clutches his throat, bracing for the axe and the beheading that's about to fall. Her long hair streams in the air as she waits, breath trembling for her death to finally arrive. Hugo stares her down, heart hammering as he scrambles to spot the crack in her story. The crowd explodes into one savage, blood-chasing roar, screaming for death like they mean it. Donatella and the first princess stare in terror, begging him to move now. Donatella whips her head toward him, desperate as she begs, "So what are you going to do?" Yoga stands with his back turned, and he tells them the princess's story is way too strange to believe. He blurts out why she never once dared to use her magic on him. Then it hits him, sudden clarity crashes in, and he knows his theory has to be right. Standing his ground on the execution platform, Yoga declares, loud and fearless, that he'll win this trial. Vivian stares at the odds and wonders how he could ever win, while King Marius watches, face grim as stone. Donatella panics, convinced Viviana is seconds from getting executed. She's scared the king has lost his mind, but Yoga stays ice calm and reassures her. With a razor-sharp smirk, Yoga declares, loud and certain, that he'll force the king to finally listen. The chapter title slams on the screen as he declares his daring plan: he's going to stop the king. Suddenly, Griselda shoves through the crowd like a storm, frantically shouting for everyone to let her through. Yoga freezes in shock when he spots a young inventor barging into the raging chaos. He grumbles that this is the absolute worst possible scenario, and Donatella leans in, asking what's wrong. Griselda tells you a thief busted into her shop, yet she's sure they didn't steal a thing. Then it hits her she was wrong all along, and one vital thing from her workshop is missing, stolen right out from under her. With eyes widening in pure dread, she blurted out the truth: what they stole wasn't just contraband, it was a deadly drug. Griselda says it with ice-cold certainty. She's been handed the proof, and the king now has her creation. Donatella fires off a question: is that the combat drug the infamous arms dealer ordered? Griselda nods grimly, and the moment she realizes what it truly means, the weight of it hits her face like a storm. She tells him that the way King is spiraling, pure, extreme agitation, is exactly what her drug does to people. Hugo blurts out who did this and why, but the silence hits hard and no one answers. With his judgment clouded, the king snaps that the execution can't be delayed a single minute longer. Yoga leans in close and calls out Donatella's name, yanking her focus straight back where it needs to be. He leaned in and asked, if a spell hit the air right now, could you tell who the magic user is? She says she can do it, but she can't shake the thought, who in their right mind would flaunt magic this openly? The king flashes back to the moment the princess used magic, but he can't figure out who was really behind it. Donatello nods and grants her request, convinced that if she focuses hard enough she can pull it off. From the stocks, Vivian blurted out, "Why are you doing this?" and said she'd come with a request. Yoga scoots in close to Donatella and hisses the details of his wild, secret, audacious plan. Her eyes snapped wide with raw shock, staring at the sheer madness of his idea like it couldn't be real. She frantically blurts out for him to wait, screaming that his plan is way too dangerous. He pats her head with a reassuring touch and declares she's his top-notch assistant. With a warm, trusting grin, he leans in and tells her, "I'm counting on you, no doubts, no exceptions." Donatella's face went red and her voice cracked as she blurted out that she's not worthy of that kind of praise. She keeps fighting his plan tooth and nail, convinced it's nothing but a suicidal gamble waiting to get him killed. She's terrified that his next move will wipe them all out, yet he's already spun around and walked off. Yoga strides forward like a live wire, and the whole crowd's attention snaps onto him instantly. He lifts his hand like a judge's gavel and declares, "I've got one last thing to confirm," as the princess's lawyer. Prosecutor Jones snorts at the interruption, brushing off the lawyer's words like they're just an annoying fly. The crowd erupts for blood, shouting that the rebel must die and that the trial should be thrown out the window. From the bloodthirsty mob, a single chilling chant surges, "Kill her." Sweat pouring down his face, Yuga begs the furious crowd to stop and just listen. The king thunders that this is what the people demand, and then he vows to carry it out without hesitation. Vivian keeps her voice steady and tells her father, "Just one more moment, please wait." Jones suddenly steps in, telling them to stop and listen to the lawyer's argument. The king snaps his head around, stunned as his prosecutor suddenly blurts an unexpected interruption. Vivian presses her father hard, insisting her guilt is crystal clear, and then she shuts the conversation down for good. Jones snaps that this isn't just some case, it's a trial, and the defendant can't be robbed of hope. He declares that in Luanu, the nation ruled by law, every single illegal act gets punished. The king finally caves, daring Yuga to prove his point before they cut him down. Yuga stared at Joan, utterly baffled, like, wait, did the prosecutor just save him? Jones just adjusts his glasses, and you're left in the dark about what he's really up to. Yuga grabs the moment and whips around to address the condemned princess. He doesn't use her title at all, he calls her by her given name, Vivian. He throws out a jaw-dropping challenge and orders her to pour her alteration magic into him. Joan and Vivienne both go totally speechless when he drops the most bizarre request imaginable. Vivian can only choke out a baffled "A" at the lawyer's words. Griselda's scream rips through the room and she can't believe it, she's yelling, "What the hell happened to him?" The crowd, Raynette included, stared in total confusion, hanging on every word trying to figure out what he was even saying. Yuga lifts a finger and says, "Look, sure, there's a mountain of evidence, but one crucial thing still hasn't been proven." He smirks and suddenly you realize the prosecution's case is missing one key piece, it's simply not feasible. He says the proof that the princess can use magic still isn't finished. He dares her to prove her power, right here, right now, by blasting him with her magic. The princess goes stone still for a long moment, her eyes narrowing like she's hunting for the truth. She shuts it down, eyes narrowing, asking why they're trying to prove something she's already admitted. Yuga shrugs off her refusal as a useless farce and calls her out by name all over again. Vivian glares daggers, sneering that he wants to stretch his life, then brands him downright ugly. He leans in and praises her powerful speech, then admits her love for her country is the real deal. He insists that if they lose this trial, the nation will crash into a colossal, irreversible disaster. He squares up to her and hits her straight with the question, does she want to take the blame for that failure? If not, then she needs to die the right way for her country, and she actually agrees, saying that sounds like the best outcome. She whips all that furious focus onto him and spits his name like venom. She swears she'll wipe him clean, make him forget everything, strip his identity down to nothing. Raynette lets out a desperate cry, begging Donatella to stop, because Vivian's magical threat is only getting stronger by the second. She vows to erase everything, every trace that he was ever a lawyer or even human. Her eyes flare wide, blazing with an immense, bone-chilling magical power. Arcane power surges through Yuga in a blinding wave, and even his own eyes gleam with the same unstoppable force. He grabs his head and howls, gasping as the magic crashes into his mind like a brutal wave. Vivian sneers and spits that he died for nothing, that everything he did meant absolutely zero. Yuga stumbles backward and jabs a finger in the air, the one-word realization burning on his lips. Donatella screams his name in panic as he crumples to the ground from the magical attack. Vivian's eyes narrowed, thrown off by his weird reaction and desperate to figure out what it meant. Yuga drops to his knees, utterly crushed by the princess's unstoppable power. Then he lifts his head, a smug grin blazing across his face as he declares loud and proud that he's won. Vivienne is totally thrown off, staring at him like, what do you mean by this sudden turn of events? A gigantic, razor-detailed magical circle starts to bloom into existence on the wooden platform. That glowing circle blasts outward at insane speed, wiping out the entire execution stage in a flash. A deafening blast of light and raw power detonates from the platform, erupting in a blinding flash that owns the whole sky. The crowd snaps backward in pure shock and terror, all of them staring like, wait, what just happened? Liliana screams for the king and Princess Vivian, terrified that something awful is about to happen to them. Joan gapes at the wreckage, then points her finger like a detective, naming the real magical culprit. He slams his claim down, this is an elven rebellion, and then orders the woman seized on the spot. The real magic user stares in disbelief, then freezes when someone tells them, wait. Donatella tells them that unlike Antonello, this person reflexively snapped into self-defense the moment things turned. Selena Ritter stands surrounded by swirling magical power, and you realize she isn't just involved, she's the true mastermind behind it all. Guards freeze in shock, blurting out that she's using magic right in front of them. The king spots her as Vivienne's secretary and rips into her, demanding answers for every move she's made. Donatella snaps that the person who just used alteration wasn't the princess at all. Selena confirms it with a sharp certainty. She says she felt zero magic radiating from the princess, not even a spark. Donatella flat out tells them the princess has no reason to hold back her power. She realizes the princess can't actually use magic at all, she was just built to believe she could. The king leaned in, demanding Donatella confirm it, and she did, no hesitation, not a single doubt. Donatella looms over a bruised, recovering Yuga and lays out her plan to rip the truth wide open. Joan finally admits he saw Selena cast magic and the truth hits him like a punch. This whole deception was way bigger than he ever imagined. Donatella, I was entrusted with this, she shouts, conviction blazing in every word. I won't let them pin murder on the princess, she's innocent, and I'll fight for that with everything I've got. Selena Ritter watches the blazing display unfold, her face sharp, mind calculating every move. Princess Vivienne, locked in the stocks, gapes upward in pure breathless shock. Donatella snaps her eyes straight onto the princess's advisor like she's got answers, and she turns to Selena demanding, isn't that right? Prosecutor Joan presses Selena, demanding to know if she's got anything to say for herself. Selena calmly declares she'll pin him down and shut him up for his insolence. She lifts a hand to her mouth, and a victorious smirk slips through like she already knows she's won. She admits it was brutal, she had to sneak into the castle while keeping her magic hidden from everyone. She's crushed because the takeover plan she fought for was right there, so close to toppling the nation and still slipping out of reach. Stunned, Joan snaps, demanding to know why she'd dare to mastermind a rebellion like that. A sharp, dangerous glint flares in Selena's eyes behind her glasses. She yanks her hair back and bam, there's the pointed ear like yep, I'm an elf. Princess Vivienne and Joan lock eyes, frozen in disbelief as the shocking truth lands like a punch to the gut. Selena lets out a chilling laugh and basically spills her whole real self, confessing that every bit of her identity and backstory was a total lie. She swings her hand like a curtain reveal, then promises to spill the real reason she betrayed them. Her eyes blaze with righteous fury, so tell me what's so great about revenge. A flashback rips the truth open, this elven disturbance was really a brutal human power war. She makes it crystal clear those persecuted elves weren't starting trouble, they were demanding their rights. Why do you want revenge? She snarls after they wiped out our people. King Marius wipes sweat from his brow and then just freezes, utterly speechless. Selena whips her manipulative stare to Donatella, trying to off her right then and there. Donatella's jaw drops when Selena finally hits her with her full name. Selena purrs, we're cut from the same cloth, same blood, same power, comrades at last. She insists that if they team up, they can bring the elven race roaring back to life. With a sharp flick of her wrist, she blasts her magic, and the guards go flying like they got hit by a hurricane. She vows to wipe out everyone, ignite a civil war, and carve out an elven nation from the ashes. Donatello stared in horror as Selena unleashed her monstrous plan. Princess Vivienne and Liliana can only stare, helpless as a wave of magic crashes over them. King and Prosecutor Joan can only lock eyes in disbelief as chaos tears through the square. From the crowd, Griselda snaps Donatella's name loud, and panic hits like a punch. Donatella grinds her teeth, her voice blasting with pure defiance, no way. Selena asked her, voice calm but sharp, why she'd turned down such a glorious chance. Have humans broken you in? She fires back and Donatella shoots back a flat, instant denial. She shuts it down flat out, Selena's plan is straight up illegal. Selena scoffs, sure Sheba would shut down that reckless show of force the second it hits. Without spilling a drop of blood, Donatella erupts in a shout, demanding a solution backed by law and logic. Selena lets out a frustrated sigh, her patience crumbling fast, guess there's no choice. Glow-bright arcane circles ring her as she tightens her grip, ready to slaughter every soul in the square. Her magic slams the guard backward so hard it's violent. Another guard bursts into screams, shouting for the terrified crowd to flee for their lives. Liliana rallies her troops, snapping orders for the royal guard to hit their positions. Yoga tells Donatella she's got this, then Donatella snaps back, she has to break free and get out. Selena flashes a grin, savoring the sweet thrill of finally getting into a real fight after way too long. Liliana steps up and barks orders, telling her troops to surge forward and follow her straight into the chaos. She lunges straight into the fight, ready to bag the culprit, while Selena watches, tense and locked in. Donatella braces herself as a gigantic, intricate necromantic seal blazes to life behind her, flooding the air with ominous light. A bright, cheerful voice slices right through the chaos. Sorry to keep you waiting. Yoga drifts through a warped void, and the last thing he remembers is a streak of magic fading into nothing. He stares up at that tiny floating figure, then every week he belts out prayers to God. It's been ages, he says, still reeling, and he demands to know whatever happened to that triumphant moment. The god girl snatches him in her arms and gushes praise, hyping him up for that insanely brilliant performance. She credits his heroic sacrifice with saving Luanu from total destruction. She watches everyone fighting side by side, and still, wave after wave of injuries pile up from the brawl. Yuka can finally breathe, but the god girl swoops in, takes the credit like she earned it herself. He wears a confused look because her words about his contribution totally throw him off. She bursts into laughter, teasing him as clever because he picked her using nothing but a process of elimination. He waves it away and demands, right through it, "What happened to you? What became of me?" he blurts out, and the god girl stares back at him, confused and curious. "Stop," he swears, "magic slammed into me," I tell him, "but what in the heck is my condition right now?" The god girl bursts into giggles, then asks him what crazy nonsense he's even talking about. With a dazzling happy grin, she blurts out, "You're dead." Yoga's expression locks up in a breathless gasp. Horror hits as the truth finally lands. That's her second round of teasing. She keeps poking him again and again, and you'd think he'd have gotten used to it by now. Yoga's eye twitches as he imagines the shock ripping through his friends' hearts. After the fight, the kingdom erupted in celebration, screaming in triumph because they finally smashed a truly terrifying enemy. Griselda watches as the usually stone-faced Donatella breaks down, full-on, uncontrollable sobbing. The god girl tears into Yuga for making a woman cry, and Yuga snaps his gaze away, mortified. Anyway, she leans in and says, "You've worked your heart out, so how about I reward you?" Yuga blinks, stunned by the offer, then he asks, "Seriously, you'll do that for me?" She flashes a warm smile and tells him it's just a tiny token of her gratitude. "I'll bring you back to life," she promises, flashing a sweet smile. She tells you, "In your own world," and while you listen, he sits there in Japan, staring at a picture of Tokyo. She teases him like, "Come on, your starving ass must have missed Japanese food by now." He hesitates over the offer, but the god girl doesn't even blink. She looks unimpressed. "What is it?" she snaps, eyes sharp. "Tell me, are you really sure you're good staying here?" He begged her to let him stay. She agreed on the spot, but only if he was 100% sure. She turns bright red and snaps that he must have fallen head over heels for her. "All right, whatever," she huffs, spins away from him and lets the conversation die. She nods at his choice and gears up to send him back. "From now on, I'm counting on you," she grins, waving like it's the most exciting promise in the world. Back in Luanu, King Marius sits over a state funeral and the whole kingdom seems to hold its breath. He roars that Shiba Yuga poured everything he had into saving the kingdom. Joan can't stop replaying Yuga's insane rise as a lawyer, and all his accomplishments hit her like a wave. He risked everything to save countless souls, Renette, Griselda, and even the young thief Marta. The king was still ready to reward him when Shiba died, and the grief crushed him before the prize could ever be given. Donatella grips a rose and calls his death the biggest regret of her entire life. The living Yuga's eyes went wide as he struggled to make sense of what he was seeing. He looks down and finds his own body resting calm as stillness, laid out in an open casket. He jabs out a trembling finger, then it hits him. "Wait, is this my funeral?" Donatella and Joan stared ahead, their faces frozen in stunned disbelief like they couldn't even breathe. He screams in terror as Joan blasts the fiends back to life. Donatella rockets forward and wraps her arms around him in a tear-soaked, joy-blasting hug. Liliana flashes a warm smile as Prosecutor Joan quickly wipes a tear from his eye, like he can't quite hold it back. After all the chaos at the royal castle, time finally started to creep forward. Yuga finally clawed his way back into the life he had in the world of Luano. His resurrection didn't just bring him back, it shot his legend even higher, cementing him as the god-chosen lawyer everyone swore was meant to win. Donatella digs into her meal with a bright grin, thanking her talented maid, Laurentia, like she's been saved by grace. But then a new, unsettling presence slid into their once peaceful home. Vivian, the former princess, storms onto the scene and declares, "I'm joining the staff as a maid." Princess Vivian was cleared of wrongdoing, but she still threw her title away, then slipped into life as an ordinary commoner. Now his maid, the former princess, starts lecturing him, and it drives him absolutely nuts. Yuga and Donatella rattle through the capital on a carriage, bouncing over cobblestones as the city blurs past. Donatella shoots Yuga a sharp stare, demanding to know why he just took on his brand new, wildly controversial defense case. Their newest client is Selena Ritter, the cold-blooded mastermind who pulled off the recent treason plot. Behind the bars, she glares back, cold, unbreakable, and totally unrepentant. You could swear that every single person gets a lawyer, no matter what crime they're accused of. Donatella realizes this is going to be brutal, because they have absolutely zero clues. Against all odds, he swears he'll fight for his new client with everything he's got. He lays out why he's doing this, and begs for the same empathy to be shown back to him. He proudly embraces his title, the lawyer of the heretical law, and strides into battle with fire in his eyes.